Excuse me. All right, everybody, let's get to it. Thank you, Tiffany. God bless you. Thank you so much for that. Andre, thank you, thank you, thank you. TMA, love it. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you, thank you. You all have been so sweet. And I can't tell you how much your thoughts and your prayers, which we do feel and which we have heard, how much they mean to all of us. I say that on behalf of Jesse, Johnny, Yusuf, Jackie,
10 seconds.
myself, and my parents, and all of us. All of us. Thank you so much.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am.
Welcome to the Jackson Show. It's Monday, August 23rd, 2021. I'm Santita Jackson. This is the Santita Jackson Show. And yes, I am here. It's a joy to be with you today. CPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station based here in Chicago, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want to hear your voices today. I want to thank you all for these many expressions of love and the prayers that you've given to my family, to my parents over the past few days, as it has been revealed that they have COVID-19 and that they have been hospitalized. We're going to be talking about that, not their cases as much as what it is that we need out of our healthcare system, what the breakthrough viruses are, how yourself when COVID comes home. We're just going to do that. When COVID comes home, what do you do? What do you do? If you're hospitalized, what medicines should you ask for? If you have to be at home, how do you protect your loved ones if you are not living alone? There's a lot to talk about today. So I want to, just from the bottom of my heart and with all of my heart, with all of it, I want to thank you all for these many, many, many expressions that you've sent to my parents and to our family. Thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart, with all of my heart, all around my heart. My whole spirit, my whole soul thanks you for all of the love that you've given us. And so let's get right to it. I want you to meet my morning stars over on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, the Santita Jackson and Friends page, and on YouTube, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube page. That's my YouTube channel. So I want you to get on over there. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn. And WCPT 820 is also streaming this show live. And if you want to hear the podcast after the show, go to WCPT820.com/Santita 7 and call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. I'm glad to see you too, Lorraine. You know, you and I have a lot in common. We both have parents with Parkinson's. Boy, what a struggle it has been. And you have been an incredible daughter and wife and mother. I don't know how you do it all, Lorraine. Everybody, call me. I want to hear your voices today. Want to hear your thoughts. Just you all can just call me. 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. Let's talk about COVID today. What happens when it comes home, everybody. Chicago, we're going to have a high of 87 degrees, partly cloudy. 90 degrees in Minneapolis, St. Paul. The Twins, well, they were off for a couple of days and they deserved it. But wow, the Cubs were routed. What's going on with the Cubs lately, right? The Royals 9, the Cubs 1. They'll be playing the Rockies today. Hopefully they can come on back, everybody. And the White Sox, well, they were shut out, but they've had quite a run lately. And 9, the Rays, the White Sox, nothing. Oh my goodness, they'll be playing the Blue Jays today. So we have got of course, at the top of the news, Reverend and Mrs. Jesse Jackson, hospitalized with COVID-19. They are resting comfortably. We're going to be talking about that, more of that throughout the show. But we also want to look at the chaos in Afghanistan. Remember, these are the headlines. It continues to rain at the Kabul airport in Afghanistan as tens of thousands of people remain waiting to escape the Taliban government. Dozens of U.S. military transport jets are expected to land there today to ferry some of the roughly 20,000 people still at the facility. The Defense Department is also mobilizing commercial airline flights to help with the evacuations. Extreme weather is really packing quite a wallop all across the United States, really across the world. But Tropical Storm Henri made landfall on the Rhode Island coast, bringing widespread power outages and damaging storm surges, everybody. And then what is happening in Tennessee? My goodness. Lots of people have died because of a flash flood on the other coast. 9 national forests in California are closed today as firefighters struggle to contain 11 large wildfires. Uh, U.S. Food and Drug Administration approval of the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine is imminent, we're told, according to a senior federal official. Another official said that the approval could come in the next 2 weeks or as early as Friday. We will see how is that going to change vaccine mandates all across the country once at least one, of vaccines is fully approved. Vice President Kamala Harris is in Southeast Asia this week, making her the highest ranking Biden administration official to visit the continent so far. Her time in Vietnam and Singapore was supposed to be a friendly diplomatic visit to promote the White House's message that America is back. However, with the dire situation in Afghanistan, things are much thornier, but she is still making the point. As she said on her Asia trip, the U.S. is still a global leader. What do you think about that, everybody? Call me, text me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. As we look at the war in Afghanistan, it is becoming clear that the U.S. public feels that the war was not worth it, as the corporate media amplify pro-war voices over developing events in Afghanistan. According to this Common Dreams report, 2 polls out Sunday show that the U.S. public has little appetite for continuing the 20-year war. A new CBS YouGov survey conducted August 18th through the 20th found that 63% of President Joe Biden's decision to pull the troops out of Afghanistan and 37% approve. Just 47%, however, approve of the way that he's handling this situation. Now, an NBC News poll conducted the 14th through the 17th asked if the war in Afghanistan was worth it. 61% said it was not. The last time the poll was asked, in June of 2014, when similar percentages were found at that time, 65% said the war wasn't worth it, compared to 27% who said that it was. Oh boy, most face masks won't stop COVID indoors, according to uh, this University of Waterloo study. That's right. Despite wearing a mask, their study found that a large buildup of aerosol droplets suspended in the air could not be stopped by the mask. We're going to talk about that. And what about dental hygiene? Did you know that that plays a role in how effective the masks are? Yeah, all of those things, everybody. You need to know those things. Lucille Times, we want to dedicate the show to her today. Civil rights figure that many of you have not heard of who fought of the same driver of the Rosa Parks bus. She died at the age of 100. God bless her. Wow, wow, wow. She was driving her Buick LeSabre to the dry cleaners on June 15th, 1955, when she spotted the black woman and attempted to cause an accident not once but twice, but 3 times she recalled. The bus driver got angry and he tried to run me off the road and into a ditch. Wow, the things that our people have gone through, everybody. Governor DeSantis in Florida has announced a new monoclonal antibody site in West Palm Beach. Indeed, he is pushing monoclonal treatments and therapeutics. What do you think about that, everybody? He announced that the state of Florida would open a new antibody therapy treatment. He's opening them all over the state of Florida. What do you think about that, everybody? What do you think about that? As we're seeing that the CDC has published a study that shows that vaccine protections wane over time, and they're less effective against the Delta variant. And, Reverend Dr. Yuri, we were just in Paris. As we bring you on, we see that yet another African American is being honored in France. Guess what? Josephine Baker will be the first Black woman to enter France's Pantheon. It is an iconic mausoleum in Paris, and she will be the first Black woman to be interred there. She is being taken out of her resting place in Monaco, because of course, Princess Grace, as you recall, Reverend Dr. Geary was very, very close to her. And so, and when she fell on financial hard times, Princess Grace took her on and took on this rainbow tribe of children that she had. And so she was buried in Monaco because that is where she found a home and she found um, great comfort with the family of Prince Grace. And so now she's uh, being brought back to Paris, where she was a leader of the French resistance against the Nazis. God bless the soul and the spirit of the great Josephine Baker, La Baker, as she is called in Paris even now. Reverend Dr. Todd Urey, how you doing?
Well, good morning, Santita. I am well, and let me start by thanking you and your family, the first family of progressive politics, for the way in which you've embraced all of us, even as we are wrapping our arms around you from a distance and praying for Reverend and Mrs. J. We know that it's tough to be focused on family dynamics when you've endured so much of the rest of our burdens. And so we thank you for making room for us in this space, and just want you to know that all of the Jackson children, the extended family, all of us who have been adopted are praying for all of you. And just know that if you all need anything, I think everybody that's listening and has reached out is ready to do whatever you need. So just know that. I want to start there and to let you know that we're looking forward to the news of having overcome this period of setback, and to celebrate the resilience that has always been Reverend Jesse and Mrs. Jacqueline Jackson. So I want to start there.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other than that, I'm good. I'm good. I am good. We're going to see how the rest of the day goes, but I'm starting out saying I'm good. So other than the fact that, folks getting shut out, beat down in baseball, at the end of the day, I have to live vicariously because, the team out here on the East Coast, honey, they gave up before the season started. The whole thing about what's next. But all is well, as they say. It's good and getting better. So I want to get started with some good news. So look at here. It's your Monday morning wake up call. Good morning, Chicago. Good morning, Twin Cities. Come on now. It's time to get ready. Time to get moving. Time to get going. Put your feet on the floor. I need you to feel the tile coming back up. It's a reminder. It's not a shock. It's a reminder you're alive. Take a deep breath. Get moving. Take a good whiff of life. Get that morning beverage going. Start that cup of coffee. Get that tea. Drink some water. I know it's hard. I don't drink a lot of water either, but drink that water and get ready for a great, great day. Need to talk to you about something. And it's simply going to be this. Don't be offended by how I tag it. It's tags are a work in progress, but this is where I'm going to start on Monday. And I'm going to start with this. It's 2 words. Stop tripping. Stop tripping. Here's what I'm talking about. If you've ever been traveling, the most exciting part of traveling for many of us is getting where we're intended to go. Now, the planning, the preparation, even the journey sometimes, those are good too, but I'm most excited, especially when it's someplace I really want to go, I'm really excited about getting there and accomplishing my goal. But that doesn't make traveling easy. Sometimes when we're on the way, we find ourselves getting anxious because we've not reached where we really want to be. And sometimes the obstacles along the way remind us that the journey is not always guaranteed to be easy. That's the way it is with life sometimes. We love setting goals and making plans, but we sometimes struggle with the challenges of the in-between, somewhere between the start and the finish. I'm not where I started, but I haven't reached where I'm going. So what do I do? What do you do? What do we do in the meantime? What happens when we find ourselves getting a little anxious about having not yet reached our goal? So I have a few suggestions for you this morning so you can stop tripping. First, remember that God's work is as much about the process as it is about the completion. I'm going to say that one more time. God's work in you is as much about learning about God's process as it is about completion. God's not arbitrary about God's work in our lives. God promises that we will never be left alone nor forsaken. But while we're in the process, God is still with us. Secondly, God always finishes what is begun. Even though you may be somewhere along the way, somewhere in between, God isn't finished working in your life, working on your life, working through your life. So don't give up on your dreams. Guess what? Because God hasn't given up on them either. Keep pressing. Keep believing that what God has for you is for you. You will reach your goal. And the Bible declares that the race is not given to the swift nor the battle to the strong, but to the one that endures until the end. You've come too far to give up now. So keep pressing, keep believing that God's perfect work will be completed in your life. And this is the next step on that journey. Thank God for today, because you are one day, even one step closer to your ultimate goal, your ultimate destination. And celebrate today. Let's not miss this. Celebrate progress and process, because even though you're not quite there, you're getting closer. God has not forgotten you. God has not forsaken you. You're closer to your goal today than you think. Remember God's promise in Isaiah 26. Those of steadfast mind, God keeps in perfect peace because they trust Him. Trust God forever. Trust God today. Stop tripping. Keep pressing. Keep believing, because you're closer to your destination than you think. That's your good news for today. Take another step. I promise you, it's going to be the best step you can make today. That's it. That's all, Santita. I want you all to have a great day.
Oh, God bless you. I love you and I thank you. You know what? It's always darkest before the dawn. Thank you for that. It seems that we quit or we let go just before the breakthrough is about to come. Wow. So thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Todd Urey, Esquire, Senior Pastor of the Douglas Memorial Community Church in Baltimore, Maryland, and of course, Vice President of Rainbow Push. We're so excited always to get this wonderful word from you every single day. I want to thank all of you. I keep thanking you because you all sending me so many wonderful messages, and I feel your prayers. Uh, and you know, I'm a weepy kind of person. So don't make me cry today, because I feel so much love. And it's just, it's some of the most challenging times in our lives, in my family's life, because we've been in public life for a long time, but uh, various members of our family are more private than others. And I respect that. And our mother has always been very, very private. But in the most challenging times, you all have always been so kind to us. And I just want to thank you for that. You've given us so much love. We've tried to give you love in the fullest measure that we possibly know how. But I want to thank you for just all of the texts and the direct messages, people who I don't even know who've just reached out. I want to thank you. And we have felt your prayers. I promise you, we have felt them. And before we go to you, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, I would like to bring up, I believe, Jerry from Huntley.
Good morning, blessings and love to you. This is Pastor Gary Hunter.
How are you?
Shot news about it. I'm fine. How are you? Is the better question. I talked to Jonathan more than I talked to most of y'all.
Yeah.
But my love goes out to all of y'all. And like you say, some of y'all are private. Some folk don't even know some of y'all exist. I'm just so have disturbed that I miss the new Dr. Jackson crowning of her doctorate. I got the Facebook pictures from Jonathan and all the rest of that, but every triumph of greatness that y'all have done, I've tried to cover. But I want to send my love, my prayers, my spirit of peace to you and your family, and to all of us who are listening. Let us, and I said it, I think, a couple of weeks ago to you. We can't thank you enough for what you had to endure and what peace you deserve that may not have been received. But I want to send as much love and respect as I can as an individual and as a man of God. And certainly, at a time like this, I want to say to you in an open forum that I love you, I respect you, And I always tell people I respect them and I love them.
Thank you.
Because to love me and not respect me is not much love. So I respect you and love you. I honor you. I honor your father and mother, and you know how private your mother was. I'll never forget. And I'm gonna say this one story. You know, all y'all had those small cars at one time, the Mustangs and all the rest of it. And we were going to get your mother, your grandmother from the hospital. I mean, from the airport. And she said, Pastor, can you take me? They got all these toy cars. Air coming in. It was in the winter. And that ride from your house to the airport was like a college education ride.
Well,
You know,
she always
tell you,
imparts lots and lots and lots and lots of information, and I'm so grateful that you have always been so kind. Every time you call in with a wonderful word of encouragement, and you say the kindest things about our family. And I want to thank you for being a brother, beloved, and friend. Thank you, Reverend. I love you. I'm sending you much love. Let me go to Natalie very quickly.
You and respect you.
Thank you, and I love and respect you. Natalie from the South Side. Natalie, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Santita.
Good morning.
Other than the hypocrisy that's going on surrounding these vaccines, I'm hoping and wishing you and your family, your entire family, wishing you well. I was so devastated when I got the news. And then what even frustrated me even more that this great international man, there was no mention on any national program regarding what was happening with your parents. And I was so angry yesterday, I was about to blow my stack. But I'm hoping that they're doing well, and I'm hoping that you're holding up well.
Yes.
And I'm just devastated.
No, don't be devastated. You know, God is good, and they're responding well to treatment, and we're so blessed. We're so blessed. We're so blessed. I mean, the fact that you feel so profoundly, it, I have to tell you, I want to thank you. I want to thank you, Miss Natalie. I want to thank you. But, you know, this is an opportunity, I think, for all of us to learn about breakthrough viruses, to learn about what kind of healthcare we all need and deserve that we don't have access to, the therapeutics that we need and deserve. We just really need to step back. My parents have always tried to use their lives they've used themselves as living sacrifices. As many of you have noted, my father does have Parkinson's and he's deep in the throes of it now. And yet he's still going and marching and getting arrested and speaking with the voice that he's got left. And, you know, I think that he is showing us, and my mother's showing us too, as she is his caregiver and is still working herself, to give God the fullest measure of all that God has given you. So you live until the very, very last moment. That's what you do. And they are responding to treatment, and I'm so grateful to God that they have access to it. So don't you fret. Just continue to pray, Natalie. I love you. Stay right here with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Call me at 773 WCPT, 773 9278. GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text, but I want to hear your voices today. And I want to thank you so much for all your love. Stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show. Is Natalie still there?
Yes.
Okay, let me, because I want to be able to say goodbye to her properly.
Okay, try talking to her.
Natalie?
Yes.
How you doing?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm not. You know what? This is a perfect example for them to stop with the foolishness and be honest about what's happening with these vaccines and talk about everything. You know, stop calling it breakthrough, because what's happening, Santita, is that the people who have been vaccinated are running around out here without masks on and thinking that, you know, the vaccines are working, and clearly they're not. You know, they need to have a conversation that, hey, we're going to hit this from all sides, that we're going to have therapeutics, we're going to provide antibody treatments, we're going to do everything, and to stop being so divisive about this virus. And I don't think it's helping anybody. And this is a perfect example of what I've been trying to say. I hate to say I told you so, because here we are down the path of the third shot. I mean, to what end?
Well, you know, I will say this. I will say this. I think that there is merit to these shots mitigating a severe form of this illness. But one of the things that we've learned, and I've tried to share this information for you that I've been getting from Israel and other countries that are heavily vaccinated or heavily that have gotten these shots. It doesn't prevent you from getting the virus. It doesn't prevent you from spreading it. It doesn't prevent hospitalization. In some cases, it does not even prevent death. So we have to observe protocols so that we can protect ourselves. A lot of people are not protecting themselves the way that they need to. I appreciate whatever my political disagreements with Governor DeSantis of Florida are, and they are many and they are profound. I do appreciate the fact that he's opened his state's residents to monoclonal antibodies and therapeutics. We need all of that. We need all of that. So, Miss Natalie, I want to give you some love because I need to welcome these other guests up. But I want to thank you for caring enough to call this
Natalie
morning.
just dropped.
Sending her much love. I love Miss Natalie. Do we have you, Attorney Hoffler?
I'm here.
Okay, wonderful. Dr. Deborah Verholden?
No for Holden. She's
Okay.
still not answering, but Dr. Knighton is
Dr.
here.
Knighton, how you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much. God is good. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. So many of you tuned in this morning. So please continue to like and share, like and share. Everybody like and share. And I want to thank you. Oh my goodness. Prayers from the Emmanuel United Church of Christ in Evergreen Park. May God bless you. Reverend Ingberg. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you so much for that. Renee Criswell, how you doing? Many of you are surprised to see me this morning. I don't know why. I'm going to show up. I'm going to be here. And so I want to thank you all. And like I said, to use this CK as a teachable moment for everybody. One of the things that one of my takeaways from this, as I look at my parents, they have access to, and too many Americans do
60
not.
seconds.
Too many do not. And so we need to fight for a universal single payer system right now. And I hope that you will take the opportunity to do that. So I want to thank all of you for being with us today, and let's just get right to this discussion, okay? All right. I love you, love you, love you, love you.
Ten seconds.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. So many of you have tuned in today, and I want to thank you. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and of course on my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show. Please like and subscribe there, and the Santita Jackson and Friends page. I want you to like and share this broadcast today. If you want to hear the podcast of this broadcast, please go to WCPT820.com/Santita about an hour after the show. They get it up pretty quickly. If you want to hear any of the old shows, they're all right there on WCPT820.com/Santita. Let's talk about when COVID comes home. It came home to my family over just a couple of days. It was quite the shock, quite a surprise. Reverend Jesse Jackson, the headline goes, and his wife have both been admitted to the hospital with COVID-19. Yes, indeed, that is true. My father's 79. If God gives him October 8th of this year, he will be 80. My mother just turned 77 just a few months ago. And so I wanted to bring on Dr. Shanina Knighton, infection preventionist, because shouldn't be lost on anyone that my parents have been married almost 60 years and they're both in the hospital with COVID. And it should not be lost that we have breakthrough viruses, and that it should not be lost that they have access to excellent health care. And they have been fighting all of their lives together. They've been together since 1962, 61, 62. They've been fighting for everyone to have equal access to equal high quality education and health care and housing. And I'll say this as I bring you on, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, Chair of Rainbow Push, outgoing President of the National Bar Association. We have a little story for you. My brother Jonathan, who many of you know is the national spokesman of Rainbow Push, brilliant speaker, organizer. Uh, Jonathan was took ill just before his first birthday when my father was a student at the University of Chicago, and he'd been working for Dr. King, but he was still in school at the time. And my parents took him to the hospital, and he just didn't get any better. He'd been misdiagnosed actually with a cold, and it turns out he actually had pneumonia. And we thank God for the motherhood of our great grandmother Matilda Burns, who'd come to spend time with us for that Christmas. And she said she smelled pneumonia in the house, and indeed he didn't have a cold. He had pneumonia. My parents rushed him to the hospital, but it was such an aggressive case, which meant that it cost a lot of money, that after a few days, maybe a week or so, they were going to put him out of the hospital. My parents were understandably devastated. And my father called Dr. King. He said, Doc, I don't know what to do, but if they put my baby out, he's not going to live. Dr. King called, said, Jesse, just hold on. Just have them hold him tonight. I'll be there in the morning. Dr. King flew in. And this is just about a year after he'd won the Nobel Peace Prize. And they kept my brother because this giant walked into the hospital, saved his life. And that's what I'm fighting for. That should not have to happen for anyone. Some giant should not have to walk into your life to save your life. Everyone should have access to equal high quality health care. Everyone. So I want to thank the hospital team of physicians for giving our parents the treatments that they're responding to so well. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, what say you? Is Attorney Hoffler there?
Says she's there.
Okay, I think she might be on mute.
Good morning.
Okay, how are you?
I'm here. Good morning, Santita. I had to put myself on mute when you were talking about Jonathan because I was brought to tears by that story. But Santita, I say to you, I say to your sister Jackie, to your brothers Yusef, Jonathan, and Jesse Jr., that you know that the world stands in solidarity and prayer as you all go through a very, very difficult time. And I just wanted to recognize that and to thank you for always, even amidst a personal tragedy, being so gracious and being so professional and being so magnificent as a person, as an individual, as a radio personality, for sharing this huge matter with the world in this way and being so constructive. So I just want to thank you for that. I have
thank you.
Had the pleasure of working alongside your parents for years, and so I just wanted to say this. While the world is anxiously awaiting to hear what's happening, for the purposes of ensuring the privacy and indeed and respecting the wishes of the family, you've confirmed the facts, and Jonathan, your brother Jonathan, will give regular updates just on how they're doing. But we, as you have said, everybody welcomes the prayers. Everyone is so blessed that they are in a facility and are receiving the care and the attention that they need during this critical stage. And that this is the beginning of a continued and in-depth discussion on this pandemic, but that the privacy and the details of what is happening to your parents in this journey at this moment, at this time in history, remain private, because just like everyone else, they're seeking medical treatment. And when people are seeking medical treatment, that is a private matter. But because they are public figures, because they are beloved, because they are indeed the world and the civil rights and human rights stage, in so many instances has been set by both of them. The family, your family, and the organizations felt it important for Jonathan to give fairly regular updates. And just there could not be a greater outpouring of love and support and prayers. And for that, we thank everyone. And Santita, again, thank you for allowing the discussion in this form.
Well, thank you.
But it's going to be, of course, limited to those parameters because we must respect your mother and father and family's privacy just as we would anyone else and any other public figure in this position.
Well, and just any human being, we do have to have parameters. That having been said, I do know that in these moments, my parents do want people to be able to take something away. Attorney C.K. Hoffler and Dr. Shanina Knighton, infection preventionist and registered nurse and a scholar at Case Western Reserve University. Um, we're all aware of the fact that they're very blessed, that even in their elder years and their senior years, they have access to excellent health care. Most people still do not. And so I do hope that we will continue this discussion on a system that does not drive you broke, even with Obamacare. And we do need the Affordable Care Act. And the former president deserves high praise for getting that through. That having been said, we've got to continue to move this ball up the hill, if you will. We need a system that covers everybody completely. And we need a system where you don't go broke. People still go broke trying to get well. That just is not the way it's supposed to be. But Dr. Shanina Knighton, we're looking at breakthrough viruses, and we're seeing more and more people who have been vaccinated who are um, who are being hospitalized, and that's happening in the United States. What is going on? Is it the Delta variant? Have we gotten very comfortable? What's happening?
So I will tell you that I think sometimes our definitions or how things change is what causes us to be in an array, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I'm mentioning that just because there has been a false sense of security that's been provided, or I would say a disconnect between science and media, and understanding that the vaccine was being presented as a cure and not as a mitigation strategy or a risk reduction strategy in regards to someone having to rely on hospital services or having to die as a result of having COVID. That was the intent of the vaccines to begin with. Not to say, oh, if you're vaccinated, you're absolutely not going to get COVID. Mm-hmm. Where these messages started to be construed is in that, hey, you get the first booster, you get the first shot, the second shot, or you get a single shot, depending on the manufacturer, then you would be protected and safe enough to go out in the public without masks and live life as usual. I would like to tell your viewer, Santita, and everyone else is that we have to stop waiting on these measures to save us individually and realize that we must do things collectively. Meaning that if early on it was, hey, stay at home as much as possible, it's going to slow the spread. If it is, hey, wear masks, it's going to slow the spread. Practice hand hygiene, it's going to slow the spread. Socially distance, it's going to slow the spread. Oh, get vaccinated, we can return back to normal life. Oh, make sure that at least if you get one shot, then we can return back to life. Then it's, oh, now wear the mask and be vaccinated and we can return back to life. The thing is we have to realize that we are going to be incorporating infection prevention practices into our daily lives, which may go against how we were at once living for some of us. We have to change that because we have to understand that whether we're talking about alpha, gamma, beta, delta, in terms of variants, we know that viruses from the beginning of time are going to mutate. We have, for example, years where we've had a mild flu, where we've had a bad case of the flu. This is traditional when we're talking about respiratory infectious diseases. So I understand that because of how it's being presented, it is a shock to many. The reason it is a shock to many is because of how it was initially presented. If it was put out there like, hey, This isn't a end all be all. This is not a silver bullet, but this is something that can help you, especially if you have these risk factors that can put you at risk of death, which may be older age, which is having chronic conditions or multiple chronic conditions. When we're talking about someone that is already, their lungs are already compromised, or their heart is already compromised, their kidneys are already compromised, they have, their pancreas is compromised. You know, if we're talking diabetes, I can go on and on and on in regards to the many systems that may cause us to be compromised. So I think the messaging has been wrong. And right now, as we're reflecting on this time, and my prayers, of course, go to you and your family. And I am a positivity person and one of those people that already look at the outcomes. So I know their outcomes is going to be great. But I remind people that this is a time of where we should actually say to ourselves, okay, if these individuals have taken these measures and they can still end up with COVID, what should I be doing for myself that I can protect or build up my own immune system to make sure that I am not at risk, or I can lower my risk of acquiring COVID or becoming severely ill from COVID? And yes, while there are therapeutic treatments that exist, I always say prevention is better than treatment. It's better for you to prevent needing those healthcare services than having to need those healthcare services and being even more sure about your outcome.
Call me 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Paula, I hear you. Paula said that, you must be getting good news because you look so confident. I have to tell you, my confidence comes from God. No one ever wants to hear that someone they love has COVID. You don't want to hear it because you don't know where it's going to go. Even on its best day, it can take another turn. I have a friend who was hospitalized. She got home and she died several days later. You never know. But what you want to do is, when I went away to college, my father said, I have one request of you, and I want just do this for Daddy. Because if you don't do this, I feel I will have failed you, no matter what you've accomplished academically. And I had some good accomplishments. Um, he said, I want you to find a church because the storms of life hit without warning, and they do. And he said, if your soul is not anchored in the Lord, you will drift away. And I tell you what, if we didn't have the religious training, which helped us to really tap into and understand our spirituality, I don't know what we would have done this weekend, because it was a shock to get that news. It was. And it was painful and it was frightening. But you just go into prayer. That's what you do. And then you start talking to Dr. Shanina Knighton and attorney C.K. Hoffler. And I have a network, and that's why this network is here, because they're your network as well, to know what we need to do when COVID comes home, attorney C.K. Hoffler. What do you do when it comes home, Dr. Shanina Knighton? Before I come back to you, Dr. Knighton, let me go to Mama D. Mama D, very quickly, your question or comment?
Well, hallelujah, greetings. I wish you hadn't said very quickly.
Yes, ma'am. I'm trying to get as many people in as we can. I don't want to,
yes, I know,
not trying to roll over
my
you.
My prayers go out to you and your family.
Thank you.
And Saturday before last, I attended the homegoing service for Rosalind Morgan, whose husband Howard was shot 28 times. So I know how serious this COVID is. But your father called me a caboose. Now, he said I needed to hook up to the train. A caboose can travel, can lead the train, follow the train, or it can travel alone. And those are very precious statements to me. But you mentioned Josephine Baker. She was the only woman to speak at the March on Washington in 1963, which is my Earth Day birthday. And as founding president of Global Committee commemorating King Days, we're inviting everybody to wear the colors black and white on Green Day and join us in Harold Washington Park if they can't be in Washington, D.C. But I wanted to know what can be done to have a form letter, and I intend to ask Reverend L. Shelton about this at the March on Washington to make sure that Reverend Jackson receives a Nobel Peace Prize like yesterday. So call me at 773-RESPECT for details about the Dream Day Vision Quest, which is chartered in 1984, and I'm the founding president of Global Committee Commemorating King Days, and those days are now pending on the school to go on the school calendar and visually affirm the three key principles of the movement.
Okay.
So it's House Bill 4954.
Okay.
So,
well, you've given us a whole lot. I want to thank you, Miss Mama D. I know. I know Reverend calls you the caboose. Let me just say this to you. I want to thank you. I hope, because he chooses and uses his words very carefully, knowing that you are willing to serve. Wherever you can be on that train, you're going to be there. And we thank you for just getting up in the morning and just having the fire that you have, and you just inspire me. You make me get up in the morning, Mama D. And I just hope you know that I love you.
And you just know that I love you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I want him to have that Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, you know
we're
what?
Putting together our form letter.
I hear you, but you know what? He already got it from you. My father said.
I know. For his work.
I got you, but let me share this with
ma'am.
you. Let me share this with you. I'll let you go because I need to bring some other people on. My father's often said that if you need things, you don't deserve it. Right. So when he's gone to broker peace in different parts of the world, and when he's brought people back out of captivity, he did it because it was just the right thing to do. And Mama D, you go on with that because I think he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. But when I look at some of the people who've gotten them, who actually stir up war, I'm like, well, no, just keep him out of that number. We're doing just fine. Sometimes your rejection is your protection. How about that? I love you, Mama D. Let me go back to you, Dr. Knighton. What do we do? Literally, if you find out that someone in your family, someone you live with, has COVID, and they're not hospitalized, what should happen?
So there are a number of measures that should be taken. One being sanitizing. And when I'm saying sanitizing, meaning understanding some people do not have the luxury of, like, let's say, being able to isolate in one room, okay, or isolate in a particular area. But I think that right there is one of the most important measures that can be taken. So, for example, if there is a isolated room for someone to be in order for them to be able to recover, that would be the first step. This individual, of course, if they have the support of others, would not be around the house, cooking their own food. Long story short, having the ability to spread their germs amongst others. So their food can actually, at that point, be, let's say, taken to their room, opposed to being around the house. The other piece of it is, and I know people often talk about the air purifiers. Air purifiers are helpful for someone that has COVID in terms of being able to keep COVID inside of the actual home. Inside of that actual room itself. So it's not necessarily going to help with preventing COVID throughout the house, but if that person is in the room, it'll at least clean the air that's in the room, helping to prevent it from going outside. I would encourage open windows when possible to allow for fresh air to come in. It is important that there is adequate air exchange. I was going to say, when it comes to hand hygiene, making sure that everyone is cleaning their hands in the home. Masks, consider masks for everyone in the home, not just the sick person, and making sure that it's covering both the mouth and the nose. Limiting shared spaces, as I mentioned. So trying not to share a bedroom or a bathroom with someone that's sick. If it's imperative that you share a bathroom, utilize the exhaust system when you see fit or when it's possible. If you have a window that can be opened, then open that window up. Wipe down surfaces daily. So if your hands touch it and their hands touch it, when we're talking about, let's say, remotes, computers, drawers, light switches, those things, doorknobs, make sure that they're being cleaned down. Once that individual is done being sick, It's important for them to thoroughly clean that room and any shared spaces. So making sure that bedding, pajamas, towels, things like that is clean.
Hold on
Try
one
to
second.
minimize.
With the
Okay.
bedding, do you throw the bedding away, or how do
No.
you clean it?
So the same with like just laundering it is perfectly fine. The
Okay.
one thing I can say is that with cloth, viruses don't survive well on cloth.
Okay.
And so you're really just cleaning it to make sure that it's not in that period of time of where that person is still shedding the active virus.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want them shedding the active virus and then let's say they're sleeping in the same bed, which they may be immune to their own virus, but let's say a kid or someone else lays down on that pillow, you want to make sure that that is clean. The other piece of it is let's say someone is not hospitalized and they are at home. It is important to understand that you should keep a list of doctors' phone numbers on the refrigerator just in case, because things change quickly. Make sure your doctor's office or the county is aware, that you've been tested or that you suspect that you have COVID, because it's important for you as well as them to keep track of your system, of your symptoms. I mean, sometimes there are navigators that when they find out that you do test positive for COVID, they'll call in and they'll check on you to make sure that your symptoms are not worsening. Make sure that you're checking your temperature, at least twice a day, and make note of symptoms just to see if things are changing if you're living with someone that has been diagnosed. When we're talking about those treatments, when we're talking about, like, let's say the antibody monoclonal treatments, or, even let's say for the flu, antiviral drugs, just understand that these things are a second line of defense to treat you if you get sick and if you are showing mild to moderate symptoms. And so it's important that you keep track of your symptoms during that time just to make sure that you do not become sick or that person doesn't become severe, because as they're becoming severe, they may require you to need more help. And as they need more help from you, that does, in fact, increase your risk.
Everybody stay right here. We're going to be talking about what you do when COVID comes home on the Santita Jackson Show. Want to know what you should do. Dr. Shanina Knighton, infection preventionist from Case Western Reserve University, and a nurse, in addition to a registered nurse, in addition to having her doctorate, is telling us how we can clean our homes, how we can clean our environments. These are things that we need to do, that we need to know how to do when COVID comes home. What happens when you go to the hospital? Should you ask for antibody treatments, or should you just be put on a ventilator? There are a lot of steps before the ventilator, everybody. You need to know those things. So we're talking that through here on the Santita Jackson Show. And I just want to thank you all for your love, and for your tuning in big numbers today. And I just want to thank you for the love that you have given to my parents and to my family. They are resting comfortably. They are responding well to treatment. Thank God. And I pray that for everybody. Stay right here for more of the Santita Jackson Show right here on WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, at AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page, and my YouTube channel, The Santita Jackson Show. Back with more of The Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. 773-763. WCPT is the number. Call me. Back in just a minute. Oh, wow. Yeah, CK,
Yes.
thank you so much today, because I really wanted you to give us some parameters. And but I think everybody needs those, because now people are being asked the most personal questions on their jobs, right? Questions that in normal times violate HIPAA, where you're supposed to be able to have some privacy. So, I mean, a lot of stuff is like, we're, the lines are not, they're no longer these sharp lines of demarcation between your privacy. And I don't think that if you're COVID positive, just like I think if you're HIV positive, you need to reveal that. If HIV, if you're in an intimate space with someone and you're about to enter into an intimate relationship, and in a pandemic, I think people should know. But my goodness,
Absolutely.
but we're crossing a lot of lines here, even with COVID-19, and that to me is problematic. It's crossing a lot of lines. So everybody, I want you to like and share today, please. Like and share. And thank you so much for, hey, Martita, my old babysitter. I love you, Martita. Marty, I'm Santita. She's Martita. I was a flower girl at her wedding. How about that? No, junior brother, go. I was like 7. There you go. You know I remember. And George and Lisa and John and Kenneth and Daryl and Sandra, thank you so much. Actually, we don't know how they got COVID. We just know that they've got it. Sandra, bless your heart. Renee, and wow, thank you all so much for all of these wonderful. Is that Joel Passmore from my grammar school? Is that my Joel? Let me know. Sending you much love. I want to know if this Joel I go back decades with. And you know what? To show you how the Lord works, CK and Shanina, guess what? Friday night was my high school anniversary. And we'd been with our mother all day. She really wasn't feeling well. And Dad he wasn't feeling well either, but he was trying to be strong for her because she was really not feeling well. And it was just it's hard to watch your parents not be at their best when they've been so strong for you all of your life. And it's quite frankly, it's unsettling and scary. So when I got home, I bathed, got myself together to go, and I laid out my clothes. I sat down, and because I keep such a crazy schedule, because my day starts at 2 a.m. 6:30, and the next thing I knew it was 11:30. I completely missed my high school reunion. But the next morning, I found out my mother and father had COVID. I'm so glad that I slept, because I would have exposed my former classmates. Because I'm in self isolation for like more than a week. I mean, can you imagine? Oh, CK, I would have felt horrible. I would have felt horrible. So
Well, Santita, I always say that things happen for a reason, we're in place for a reason, and a time in history.
mhm.
But with your journey, your family's journey, all of our journey, your parents have so many tentacles, both close
Sending Dr. Porter and Dr. Arnold
far
through.
away in the forest spaces of the world, because they've helped and impacted so many people. So your journey and the things that are happening in this space, this COVID space, are the world is watching, because it's going to be instructive for everyone. And just but even with it being instructive, you're all entitled to some privacy, like everybody else, like every person in the world, whether you're a public figure or not. There's a level of privacy that you should expect. But everybody watching far and near, will pray, because that is the best thing that we can do. When people say I get a lot of texts and emails about you all and your family and what people can do. And I respond, pray. Just pray, because that's how you made a comment about your faith being strong and how that faith has gotten us all through so much.
Oh, yeah.
And this is one of those times that we continue our faith. We don't just become someone of faith now. We continue our faith. And even if we do just become someone of faith, we continue that and that journey with God. And so I think a lot of lessons to be learned, a great discussion with Dr. Knighton, and I'm sure Dr. Deborah Verholden, about COVID, the things that Dr. Knighton has been saying and Dr. Deborah Verholden have been saying, preaching to our communities so that we do best practices are so important.
Absolutely. Well, we're joined by the former head of our Illinois Department of Public Health, a war veteran, and my dear, dear friend, Dr. Damon Arnold. Just to fully disclose, he's also someone we all consult for medical advice. He goes from being Damon to Dr. Arnold. We need your help here. Should I be taking this?
Hey.
And then, of course, how are you? And we've got Dr. Marilyn Corder, who also hosts her own radio show, but she's from Howard University. Whoop, whoop, in the house. I love it. Come on now. That's right.
Oh.
Come on now. Running this place today. Come on, Dr. What? Yes. HU, what? You know what's up. There you go. But it's okay. And of course, she is a professor at the Howard University School of Medicine. But how can we hear your radio show, Dr. Corder?
Oh, yes, we are Radio 1 every Saturday, 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard. And that's 104 a.m. And it is, Village Talk with Dr. Quarter. We know that, we have a lot of conversation to talk about. We talk about everything, not just medical.
60 seconds.
WOL, 1450 a.m. rather.
There you go. We're going to do that. So stay right there, everybody. Stay right there. And I'm going to, callers, I'm going to get to you. Continue to call me, even though it's busy. I'm trying to move callers as quickly as I can at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. That's 9278. I want to hear your voices today. Thank you so much for all of your love. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Stay right here.
Ten seconds.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, Monday, August 23rd, 2021. I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you. I want to hear your voices today. 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. That's 773-763-9278. If you want to text me at that number, GWC Injury Lawyers gives you that opportunity. But I want to hear your voices today. You all have been so kind and generous and loving in your expressions as you have told me and my family about the prayers that you're sending up for my parents and our family as they battle COVID-19. That just like a bolt out of the blue. It happened to us. COVID has come home to the Jackson family, and thank God and for health and strength and having enough health to fight this, having enough strength to fight this. We just thank God for that, and we thank God for the magnificent staff at Northwestern University Hospital and the medicines that they've had access to, that they're responding to. And we want to thank you for that. But I want to hear your voices today. I want to hear about your experiences with COVID. Want to hear from Dr. Shanita Knight, an infection preventionist, resident. She's a tremendous scholar from Case Western Reserve University and a registered nurse. I mean, she has gotten degrees in everything. But if you want to know how to prevent infections or things that you need to be looking at, been talking about that. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, outgoing president of the National Bar Association, chair of Rainbow Push, brilliant lawyer. We've been talking really about the parameters that we all need to have when we are faced with COVID-19 or any other illness. What are your rights? Do you have any privacy rights? Something to think about. And of course, Dr. Damon Arnold, the former director of our Illinois Department of Public Health, war veteran, brilliant, brilliant physician, really someone who just threw away private wealth and went into public health, and that is what he does. He just lives to serve at every level. Dr. Marilyn Corder. Oh, it's Howard University, all up in the house. Sorry, Attorney Hoffler and Dr. Knighton. It's okay. Dr. Corder, pediatrician, professor at the Howard University School of Medicine. Love it, love it, love it. I want to let me get a few of these headlines in, and then we'll get right into this discussion about COVID-19 when it comes home. Chicago, a high of 87 degrees we will have today, partly cloudy. St. Paul, 90 degrees, partly cloudy. The Twins, well, they were at rest. But the Cubs, well, the Royals 9, the Cubs 1. They'll be playing the Rockies today. Perhaps they can come back. Everybody, the White Sox were shut out by the Rays 9-0. They'll be playing the Blue Jays today. Perhaps they can come on back. Chaos continues to reign at the Kabul airport in Afghanistan as tens of thousands of people remain waiting to escape the new Taliban government. Dozens of U.S. military transport jets are expected to land there today to ferry some of the roughly 20,000 people still at the airport facility waiting to get out of the country. The Defense Department is also mobilizing commercial airline flights to help with the evacuations. Tropical Storm Henri made landfall yesterday on the coast of Rhode Island, bringing widespread power outages and damaging storm surges. And we are seeing in Tennessee more than 17, at least 17 people have died. Flash flood. What a time we are having with the weather all over the country. The full U.S. Food and Drug Administration approval of the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine is imminent, according to a senior federal official. Another official said that the approval could come in the next 2 weeks or as early as today. Pfizer's vaccine has so far been distributed under an FDA emergency use authorization. Full approval could help businesses, schools, and states enforce vaccine mandates and encourage some hesitant people to get the jab or require them to, everybody. Vice President Kamala Harris is in Southeast Asia this week. Indeed, she said on her tour that the United States is still a global leader. Wow, everybody. How do you think this is going to work out? She will be in Vietnam and Singapore. It's supposed to be a friendly diplomatic visit to promote the White House's message that America is back, but she's facing a lot of questions about Afghanistan and the handling of that. So we will see how all of this goes. We'll be monitoring this on the Santita Jackson Show throughout the week, everybody. And one of the major headlines in the country, if not the world, is Reverend Jesse Jackson and his wife Jacqueline have been hospitalized with COVID-19. They are resting comfortably, responding well to treatment. We're going to talk about that today, everybody, as we're watching the CDC studies that show that vaccine protection wanes over time. It's less effective against the Delta variant. We're seeing Governor DeSantis, Ron DeSantis, out of Florida, someone who has been engaged in a fight about masks, someone who has questioned the efficacy of vaccines. Well, he is opening the door to antibiotic treatments, to therapeutics. So let's have this discussion today on the Santita Jackson Show. We've been talking about COVID-19, what happens when it comes home. Dr. Shanina Knighton was telling us how you clean up your space when someone comes home with COVID-19, if they're not going to be hospitalized. So let's get right to it. Before we get to this medical panel, what are the parameters that we need to have, Attorney C.K. Hoffler? Do we have a right to privacy at this time? I mean, anybody, I'm not just speaking of Reverend and Mrs. Jackson. These are my parents, but I'm wondering, because I know a lot of people who are working on their jobs, they're being asked a lot of questions that are making them uncomfortable.
Certainly, Santita. And I think we have to distinguish between a right to privacy, which is what I referred to earlier as, when people have medical ailments or have COVID, they have a right to privacy where even if they're public figures, where the world is not entitled to know everything about their history, their background, their medical condition. They should know that they have COVID. And especially, when and that is an important thing when you have an infectious disease, because as Dr. Knighton has said, that information is power to prevent the spread of it. But the privacy that I spoke of in that instance is people's right to privacy when they're suffering with a disease or with an ailment beyond the communication. And so that's one type of privacy. The privacy that you're speaking of is something different on the job. When you are confronted with a situation on the job, and there's a pandemic as we have now, and your boss says, look, I need to know everything about your medical history because I just want to make sure that, you don't have COVID. That is going too far. There are some workplaces, many, that are mandating that people take the COVID vaccine. That's one thing. Do they have the right to do that? They do. Will it be challenged? More than likely, yes, with litigation. But right now, because of advisories from the EEOC, federal laws, and also you have to look at what your governors are saying. Some governors are taking the position that employers can mandate that or employers cannot mandate that. So you've got to look at federal government and look at what's happening in the state. But that does not give anyone license to go into the nitty-gritty details of everything having to do with your medical history. Vaccination status, perhaps yes. Testing status, perhaps yes, in results. But not everything that's happened to you in the past and what other ailments you have. That's not permissible. Those could be HIPAA violations. And you should not feel compelled to turn over all of those records. Some employment places have questionnaires and they just want proof of vaccination. I think that should be distinguished from going into the details of your medical history because, quite frankly, there are privacy. That's why there's such a thing as HIPAA. We've got some doctors on the line. There's HIPAA to protect your rights in terms of privacy. Now, when we're operating in a pandemic, I think sometimes the lines are blurred in the workplace. But my impression, employers can go too far. They can go too far. Mm-hmm. Mandating, so just to summarize, mandating vaccinations, yes. Mandating testing, yes. But the rest, and a little bit about your medical history to give them that information. But the rest of it, I think, is too intrusive.
Can I ask a question, CK?
Sure.
So my question is then, so with the vaccination, let's say mandates that are ensuing. So let's say your employer says, like, you know what, they have a 100% reporting status or everyone is vaccinated. And there just so happens to be what people call these breakthrough viruses or outbreak, you know, like what happened in Boston. Does that then give the employee, let's say the employee gets severely sick, so everyone's vaccinated, an employee, and that person has been vaccinated, is suspected to believe to get it from work because there is an outbreak, does that then give that person recourse for litigation against the employer? Because one of my concerns that I have is there are a lot of employers that are asking their workers to be vaccinated, yet they do not have infection prevention standards in place to make sure that there are other measures for those individuals to be taken care of. So whether there isn't space for them to socially distance, whether they're not cleaning surfaces regularly, whether even the air quality not being good. And so I ask, you know, that while these employers are saying, hey, you can be mandated, do these people still have some sort of recourse to say, well, you didn't take all of the measures to be able to protect me, even in spite of me being vaccinated?
I think that's an excellent question to raise, and I would answer it this way. This is all an evolving part of the law as COVID is evolving. Every week there's a whole new something that the CDC says, although I will say, Dr. Knight, you've been consistent from the get-go in terms of what you advise people to do. So I'd like to answer it in two ways. Firstly, does an employee have a cause of action, meaning can they sue? I'm break it down. Can they sue the employer if they have contracted COVID when they have been vaccinated? And the question is, you can always sue your employer. Is it a good idea when we know that the Delta variant is circulating? And you'd have to be able to, just like any litigation, pinpoint causation. You have to be able to prove that you got COVID from the workplace, number one, and that they were irresponsible, grossly negligent. They were so bad that it could give rise almost to punitive damages. And that's a very, very difficult or high bar. And there has to be something unusual, such as your employer intentionally or did something, even if it wasn't intentional, was so negligent, put you at risk in such a way that no reasonable people would agree that that was appropriate conduct in the workplace. Something like, for instance, and I will have to disclose, I'm involved in litigation against Amazon on behalf of a class. Early on, this was in March of last year, when Amazon failed to provide protective gear to the workers with the outbreak of COVID, and some of the workers got sick. That was before they really had a defined, COVID policy, and they just weren't providing protective gear. People were working and getting exposed. We did file suit. So there is the ability to file suit, but conditions on the situations have to be so egregious that just think of no reasonable person could agree that workplace is safe or that the employer is providing a safe workplace. And you got to be able to tie, if you're going to sue on behalf of getting COVID, you have to be able to tie you getting that disease to the workplace. And I think that's difficult. And so I would kick that causation, and the law we call causation, back to the doctors. How do you prove that? Because you could walk outside and you could be in the parking lot of a grocery store. We talked about how these variants are so easily people can get these variants. And so that's a medical question. But if you have the ability to do that, I just don't know how you could, then yes, that could be a viable, potentially cause of action. There are a whole lot of other things that we have to line up too.
You're bringing up something very important, which goes to Dr. Damon Arnold, because you've dealt with group health, public health. And I'm going to go to Dr. Corder as well, because she deals with children. We're about to send our kids back to school in the midst of this pandemic. I mean, is causation important? Is that important to know, that whether you have the Delta variant or any of these other variants, is that important? Is it important to know where you got it from, Dr. Arnold?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And one of the things that I always like to say this is, remember, science never asks for you to believe in it, but it's incredibly unforgiving if you do not. So you can decide to walk off the edge of a cliff and not believe in gravity, and gravity could care less. And on the way down, either if you survive, you may become a believer in that gravity exists. So this is a virus that has no geopolitical ties. It has no racial ties. It has no ties to anything that we would want to put around it, the legal system, the workplace, the home. It does not care. It is a virus that is out there, and the variants, we had the Alpha variant from the UK. We have a South African variant, a Brazilian variant. We have 2 variants from California. We have one, the Delta variant now that we talk about, from India. And each of these variants, as long as people are unvaccinated out there, these variants can thrive. They find their next victim, their next host. And the Delta variant is about 50 to 60% faster in transmission than the Alpha variant, which is the UK. The UK variant is about 50% faster than the variant that initially came from Wuhan, China. And as long as we allow these viruses to mutate, into this other variant, and actually when we say Delta variant, there are actually 15 different forms of the Delta variant. So it's not just a simple thing. The Delta variant has 1,000 times more viral particles that it produces in your body, and has been affecting the brain, the heart, the kidneys, and the lungs, as well as the liver. So the variant type actually is very, very important.
Dr. Corder, what do we do about the children? Because people are...
Wow.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Yolanda Adams' song, What About the Children?
What about the children? What about the children?
They are the most vulnerable, and now the school is opening up, and we have pre-K to middle school individuals going back into environments that are possibly COVID positive. If we don't do what we need to do as 12-year-old and above, getting vaccinated, as well as following the CDC guidelines, temperature check, social distance, small individuals, small pods. So what about the children? We are hearing that one day soon, I can't say when, that they will have the vaccinations for children 2 and above or 5 and above, authorized. But until then, they are at risk. We have here at Children's Hospital, currently we have 15 individuals, children who have been hospitalized from COVID just this week alone, which is almost matching the peak that we had back in September for COVID hospitalization. Now, we're saying hospitalizations. That does not mean of the 60 or 70 per day coming in with respiratory problems, some of them not having to be hospitalized, but monitored as they are COVID positive. So this variant, as your guests have said, has been 50 to 60 times more aggressive, and doesn't give you a lot of time before it really begins to severely affect the lungs and the whole systems in children as well as others. But there was a time, as we spoke earlier, months ago, that we thought the children were not so affected or not so vulnerable because they, in turn, had high, immune systems, so they're always being bombarded with viruses, etc. But now that we've been inside, which was earlier mentioned, as well as now we've had the variant, major infections have been occurring, and I predict that they still will until we do what we need to do in terms of vaccinating.
Well, we've got when we look at the most vulnerable people, we look at the children, we look at the elderly. Um, what can be done to protect the elderly who do not live, Dr. Arnold, who do not live in assisted living, who live at home? Because now, 70 doesn't look the way it looked, you know, back in, you know, back in the 70s, 60s, and 50s. Now people are out jogging,
Right.
doing this. I mean, it's a whole different. A 70-year-old looks like someone who's 45 or 50 if they take care of themselves, and if you stay viable. What are we to do? Because I just get the sense that we still do not realize that we are in this pandemic and we're fighting over masks. We're fighting all over so many things. And I don't think, are we still in a pandemic, Dr. Arnold?
Oh, we are definitely still in a pandemic.
Okay.
And,
I just want to make sure.
Recently there have been some things that were done related to how we're dealing with actually after getting immunized, getting your first 2 doses. We're starting to find out we have to go back and we have to do, you start having waning antibodies. So what we do know is that the 3rd booster dose is going to be essential. And to get back to your question about seniors, most of the people who died thus far have been seniors. Mm-hmm. Those people who are 60 years old and older have been the most hit population, mostly in convalescent care settings, skilled nursing facilities, long-term care facilities, your veterans' homes. Those are the places where this virus has been thriving. And we even have a resistance in the medical community among some people who I don't know how they got their license or their training or their certification to believe that they can not have a vaccination and treat patients. So that's another issue that's out there. That there was a smaller percentage of the population of healthcare providers, but it's something that needs to be addressed. Now, for the seniors, we are now looking at a 3rd dose. And the reason is that we have waning antibody levels over time, approximately 6 to 8 months. And then the higher levels of antibody are associated with higher levels of vaccine efficacy, how effective it is at making sure this virus doesn't take over your body and become implanted in your body. And then if we do have these higher things that protect against the Delta, what we're saying is that people who are fully vaccinated are protected against the Alpha, the Delta, the Beta, and we now have the Lambda in the background coming in, so they're looking at the data from that. The Epsilon, there's so many different variants. We're using Greek alphabet letters now so that we don't stigmatize countries.
And you're going to double up on that, Alpha, Alpha, Omega, Omega. I mean, it's just every day.
Yeah.
It's, just stay right there because we're going to come back with some more questions. And, the phone lines are open, everybody. 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Let's talk about what happens when COVID comes home and what we can do to protect ourselves. Dr. Shanina Knight, want to know what we can do to protect ourselves in our homes. Is there a difference between cleaning and sanitizing? Should we use bleach? My grandma Gertrude believed that bleach cleaned everything. And sometimes you walked in her place and it smelled like a combination of bleach and Lysol. Huh? Has it gotten to that? But you didn't get sick around her. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. She believed bleach could clean anything. Anything. Even your red shirt, okay?
Yep. It will clean your red shirt.
Oh, man. And she used a clothesline. I think she tried
my
to.
grandmother too, yeah.
Oh, I tried to do it at my place in D.C. I mean, my mom was like, no, you're not going to do that here. But she liked that. She just, CK knew my grandmother, and she was very, very, she was a vegetarian. She felt that she had all of her teeth. And she felt that we were leading lives that were not healthful. She said, you shouldn't eat all this meat. And the doctor said when he saw her, as because she had gotten sick in the end, but she had had strokes, but she was basically very, very healthy. He said, well, first you kill the animals and the animals kill you. I said, oh, as I went to get my ribs, I said, I hear you. Wow. But my grandmother didn't play that. She felt that we were too far away from the land. She said, you need to grow some vegetables and pull them out your yard and make them yourself. And you need to wash your hands all the time, Dr. Knighton, and wash out your nose and your ears. Take a bath. When you get up in the morning, take one if you stop home for lunch, take a bath. And when you get in the house, she changed the sheets every day, cleaned every day. I don't know how she did it, but you know what? I've gotten that from her because I don't sleep on sheets more than twice. Because, you know.
But Santita, I was talking to someone yesterday, and one of the things that really struck me, and I haven't thought about it, until recently about this. But the reason why we have so much of a problem in the country is a failure of the educational system to educate people on their health. And so people are sitting out there and they have no idea what you're talking about. Vaccine, what is that? What is an antibody? How do I, protect myself? So it's easy to fool people and to get them onto an emotional plane where they're not thinking logically because they don't have the background or the education knowledge to know the difference between a lie and the truth.
Well,
I agree with that, but I would also.
Okay, no, please go on, Dr. Knighton. But don't spend your best stuff over here, y'all.
Yeah, our system truly failed us. And I know people want to put this on one person, but that's not the case. Because this isn't the first time that we've had a pandemic. This is the first time that it's changed life as we know it, in modern day. But the problem is these infection prevention practices have been around for some time, and we know that they are multimodal. However, the breakdown of communication when you go to the public and you say, oh, stay at home for 2 weeks and this is going to slow the spread and we'll be back to normal. And
60 seconds.
Change it up and say,
hold that thought.
And then you change it up and say vaccines is different.
No.
You gotta put it all together in one package.
I want you all to make that point.
Kind of slow.
I want you all to make that point. For the radio audience too. I really do, because there's a lot.
This is our new normal.
It is.
That's what I think.
It is.
I could be wrong.
We
just need to embrace it.
It is. But they got to stop doing that, though. I mean, I'm being honest. Like, you can't say, oh, get this vaccine and we'll be back to normal. Then it's, oh, guys, we're going to need a booster. Oh, we're going to need 2 boosters. No, be transparent with people and let them know what you know and what you don't know, and they won't be so skeptical. So this situation that we're in is a failure for us to put everything together. Like, that's honestly the problem. And it's not, saying anything about people's credentials, but the individuals who are driving infection prevention shouldn't have been.
Well, first of all, they need to have you in there to tell us how we can prevent infection.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Cool. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763. WCPT. I'm coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and on YouTube, the Santita Jackson Show. So many of you are over there today. Please like and subscribe. And on the Santita Jackson and Friends page right here on Facebook and the WCPT Facebook page. We're streaming live. And if you want to hear the podcast of the show, please go to WCPT820.com /Santita, WCPT820.com /Santita. We are talking with this magnificent group. Dr. Damon Arnold, former director of the Illinois Department of Public Health. Indeed, he keeps threatening to do something else because he's also a brilliant artist, but he keeps getting pulled back into this space, particularly now. We need him desperately. And we're so glad that he's availed himself as he is helping us to get through this pandemic. People like you never can retire, not when you've run a whole state healthcare system. You just can't do it. And Attorney C.K. Hoffler, chair of Rainbow Push, outgoing president of the National Bar Association. Dr. Shanita Knighton, infection preventionist, registered nurse. Also, Dr. Shanita Knighton. She is a scholar at Case Western Reserve University. We should be hearing more from infection preventionist Dr. Marilyn Corder. Before I get back to you, because we were having quite the debate just before we came back on the air, Dr. Corder, let me just, well, look, before I get to you, Dr. Corder, because I and to engage about infection prevention with children, which is very hard to do. Uh, you were saying they're mixed messages, Dr. Knighton and Dr. Arnold. You all were speaking to the mixed messages. I mean, last year we were told we didn't need masks, and we were not. It wasn't just President Trump; it was Dr. Fauci. They were not wearing masks. It turns out Dr. Fauci knew we needed masks, but he said we had a shortage of PPEs. Understand that? So we had to get the masks, and we had to get that geared to the frontline workers. I get it. But the messaging on that, when you came with a mask, when you came folks with mask mandates, it became a problem, Doctor, Dr. Arnold and Dr. Knighton. Because then people were like, well, what is it? Then we were told once we get the vaccine, everything's going to be okay. It's not quite true. It's the mixed messaging, Dr. Arnold. I think that is bedeviling the mitigation of, well, I mean, the ending of this pandemic. Because, Dr. Deborah Verholden has made the point that we were able to flatten the curve last year without a vaccine, without these shots, right? So what is it? And I'd like for you and Dr. Knighton to engage each other very quickly about that. What about these mixed messages? Dr. Okay, well, let me start with you, Dr. Knighton, and then you can speak to that. Dr. Arnold.
Okay, so first and foremost, when it comes to mixed messaging, I don't think necessarily that it was mixed messaging instead of just not being comprehensive with everything that was happening. Being transparent with everything that was happening, including the fact that there were just some things that were unknown. So early on, when it was a message of don't wear masks, you only need to wear masks if you are sick, that has been the traditional infection prevention practices inside of healthcare. We have to realize that a lot of these public health initiatives are driven by what was happening inside of hospital settings. Even the ones that are happening right now inside of nursing homes is driven by hospital settings. So that is where these infection prevention guidelines come from. So early on, masks were not needed. The more that we started to learn about the virus and say, oh, well, it actually can be transmitted through aerosols. And we started to learn why it was as highly as contagious. In terms of being a respiratory infectious disease, the recommendations came that everyone should wear masks. The problem is with all of these things is that the message that infection prevention strategies must work together in order for us to decrease the spread was not shared. So when you send one message out and say, oh, stay home for 2 weeks and we'll beat this thing. Then you come back and say, oh, let's stay at home. We got to stay another 2 weeks. We're on a downward trend. We're moving in the right direction. Then we finally say, okay, come back in public. But then it's, oh, everyone, you have to wear masks while we're out in public. Then that sends the wrong message. We didn't beat it, right? So then it's, oh, everyone needs to go and get tested now because if everyone is tested, then we can beat it. Then it's, oh, well, guess what? The vaccines are here. So get vaccinated. We'll be able to go without masks and we'll be able to open up the rest of the world and we're good. It's, oh, wait, now the vaccine isn't working. We actually need to have a booster, or it's working, but it's not working as effective. And for as long as we thought, we need to take a booster. My point with all of this messaging is this. If it was understood that we needed a toolbox in order for things to work, and that, yes, the purpose of the vaccine is to reduce clinically relevant symptoms and prevent hospitalization so that way we don't overwhelm a healthcare system with us being 330-something million citizens in a healthcare system that has less than 1 million beds where everyone can't get care if everyone is affected with COVID, then I think that we would be in a much different state than what we are. And it's different when you tell someone, oh, clean your hands, with recognizing that only 3 to 6% of the population cleans their hands correctly, which also means that when we're talking about environmental cleaning, people are still spraying disinfectants and just wiping, not realizing that these disinfectants, on the back of the bottle, there sits a contact time for which that solution has to sit on that surface in order for it to work effectively and kill the germs. When we talk about masks, there is a such thing that, yes, masks can keep you safe, but if you do not wear them safely, then they can also cause problems. These are messages that have not been shared, and unfortunately, because they haven't been shared, then you do have people that are looking at guidelines with a side eye. And unfortunately, I put it to you like this. I'm much more empathetic in understanding where people are coming from because we have failed the public in terms of being able to share a comprehensive measure of where it is we're all going as a team. We have not looked at this as a team approach. We've looked at this as people being numbers instead of people being individual lives that matter.
I can't say that I disagree with that. I agree with it. Because, people, Dr. Arnold, people really, they make good sense, or at least they try to. Most of us do. And, and when you start locking a society down, as we did last year, people are fearful. We were all frightened to death. Do we have enough toilet paper? Do I have enough food in my house? Do I have enough money to get enough food in my house? I've lost my job, or people on my job are getting COVID. I mean, everything has changed, and everything was changing. The rug was being snatched out underneath our feet immediately. Um, what do you do if you have COVID and you're not living alone? I mean, do you cast someone out of the house? I mean, there were just so many questions. We've gotten so many messages. How can we get on the same page now, Dr. Arnold?
Well,
What can we do?
part of it is that we had a dysfunctional government, a very dysfunctional government with a president that was psychotic. I always say the GOP stands for Gathering of Psychopaths, but the people who were in that party actually spread rumors and lies and were working on people's emotions, not on their intellect. And the educational system in this country is abysmal, is pitiful. People are listening to ideas and rumors and lies and theories without even reading a book, without trying to find out what is the truth. And as long as we go down that path, we'll have people who, back in February, we had 502,000 people who had died. President Biden and Vice President Harris were staying at the reflection pool in Washington, D.C. with the luminaries lit and the Washington Monument in the distance. And they said, there's a vaccine that's available. Take it. Since that point in time, we now have 624,000 people who have died. After a while, you have to look at the evidence and say, you know what? I've been seeing people die in my block and their bus is going down the street and it looks like they're running people over. Maybe I should stay away from the bus. So we have got to come to grips. Otherwise, we will have children going into the future who have chronic diseases we haven't even started to talk about yet. This virus is attacking hearts, lungs, and my wife was walking on a path, and she had a friend who was a triathlete, and she was an incredible sports person, right? And she said, how are you doing? She said, well, 5 months ago, I had the chance to get the vaccine. But, I felt I was in good health. I was exercising. I was eating right. And, I just didn't believe, I was wondering if it was a hoax. 1 month later, she ended up on a ventilator. And she had extensive scarring of her lungs. We're not talking about a joke or someone's opinion. We're talking about scientific fact. 99.9% of people who are going to the hospital right now, who are being admitted and going to the intensive care unit, are completely unvaccinated. And so she said, I am a triathlete, but I don't think I can even get around this path once walking. They told her that her lungs were permanently scarred. There were 7 people who already had double lung transplant at Northwestern Hospital. I mean, if that doesn't show you that something is out here and you see the facts and the realities of what's going on, We have got to get people vaccinated, irrespective of how the government screwed up in the past, irrespective of all the misinformation. Right now, it's life and death for people who are out there.
Well, Norma Jean asks about the vaccine affecting the heart of a family member, because we've seen vaccine injuries that also affect hearts, and we don't hear a lot about that either. What about the discussion? Because I think we need to open up the discussion, because now we have a lot of mistrust and distrust. People are afraid, is in particular for their children, to get these shots. Just stay right there, Dr. Corder. And people are afraid. And how can we hear you before you answer the question? How can we hear you every Saturday on Radio One? What station is it in DC?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. Yes, it's Radio 1, 1450 AM. That's 1450 AM, Radio 1 to Captain Houston. And my dial is WOL 1450 AM every Saturday Eastern Time, 3 p.m. to 4. And, I just feel that we need to make sure that we are doing the right thing for our vulnerable, and that's our children. I'm a pediatrician here in Washington, D.C., and we've seen an increase, and we're continuing to see a surge and increase even before school officially opened. Today was the opening day of children. So bronchiolitis, respiratory infections, and inflammation of the lungs is what we're looking at with this Delta variant and more.
Where is it coming from with these children? What's happening?
Well, it's coming from relatives of children that they're associated with, grandparents, parents, the millenniums. And unfortunately, we still have those teenagers, 12 and above, who are still not properly or completely vaccinated. So they're in the household. Not to mention with the siblings, or rather with the classmates who are asymptomatic. And that means they have no symptoms, but they are spreading the Delta. And just because they have the Delta, they may not be sick. But that's why it's important to do weekly testing, as the school systems are doing.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think it's important to test for the COVID-19 positivity of the vaccinated as well as the unvaccinated? Because we're seeing evidence that the vaccinated and the unvaccinated can carry the same viral load. But people who've been vaccinated, so many of them, they will tell me, well, I don't need to wear a mask, or I don't need to do this because I've gotten the shots. Dr. Corder.
You can still get you can still get the variant, any of the COVID, and it's important to as well get tested. I'm a vaccinated physician, but I still mindfully get tested, and I think that that's important, and that will add to the mitigation of this virus.
Let me go to Pam from the West Side. Pam, you've been holding for a minute. What's on your mind, Pam?
No, thank you, Santita, and to the panel for all of this information. Santita, I wanted to say, Reverend Jackson and your mom, my thoughts are with them. And I can only imagine, Santita, Reverend Jackson saying to the doctors, look, get me out of here because I have work to do. And that's just my picture of him.
And he's trying to keep him in the hospital, but I don't.
Absolutely, and for a full recovery.
Thank you.
And also, I wanted to say about the media. It's interesting. I know they've been hounding your family about updates on your mom and dad, but isn't it interesting when Reverend Jackson was putting his life out on the line with Reverend Barbara, trying to march for voting rights, 50 plus years later? Did the media hound to give some updates about that, Santita? Did they call you trying to get updates about his work? Now he's still fighting and putting forth the effort. He could have assigned people to do work, but no, he can't work from home if he wants to get the work done and bring the attention to issues. So I thank him for that. And to the media, why don't you ask about updates on that issue? I'll move on to the doctors. You talked about grandparents. Santita, here in Chicago, I used to work with this population of people. You have grandparents that are raising grandchildren for various reasons. And I'm always concerned about that population and how do they navigate now that children are returning to school. And this is my last comment. I thought it was a mistake for Joe Biden, and maybe he was just going with the science to ask people to remove masks. What about still washing your hands for 20 seconds or as many times as possible in the day? I never stopped doing what we did at the beginning of this virus, and because I was just afraid, just didn't know because it is a novel virus. And looking for a host, I'm hearing that pets could be a host. And then, and Santita, and for those on the anti-vaccination and all of that nonsense, you are willing to put your children's lives on the line with this fight about it's a hoax, I'm not going to do it. If we're at that point, Santita, that people don't care about their children getting sick, where are we going as a country?
I think that, but I think that people do care about their children getting sick. But I think that we've not had as full a discussion about medicines and their contraindications as we should. You have a lot of parents out here who have questions about vaccines as it relates to children on the autistic spectrum. And then they're called anti-vaxxers. And I think that all this labeling of people instead of having a full discussion and debate is writing people off as foolish, as kooks. It's not right. It's just, I think we can do this much better. We can do it right.
Let me rephrase that. Well, you're right. Let me rephrase that. For those people who were told that this was a hoax and believed it, you're right about that, Santita, and I will adjust that thinking.
Sure.
For those who really, didn't want to believe the science or, believe the people who called it a hoax.
But what about the people who believe it, but they say, you know what? Because that there's a segment of that. But then you have a lot of people who say this is real, but I don't trust the medicines that have been presented to us.
I think. But if you don't believe it, can't you still wear a mask?
Absolutely, but you have a lot. No. I think I think that I think painting people with one brush is a mistake. Everybody who turns down the vaccine is not an anti-vaxxer. Everybody who's had the vaccine is not wearing a mask. I mean, there are so many layers here. But I think we need to have some discussion so we can really know what we're looking at and who we're looking at. We just don't.
I appreciate this discussion.
I appreciate these differing backgrounds here because to hear Dr. Corder say, hey, we got a problem with our children. They're walking into these schools in DC, which has the poorest black children in the country, by the way. They're walking in here and they are sick. And we got a problem. To hear Dr. Arnold say, wait a minute, I've run a statewide public health system. We have a problem here. I've also been in the Army, and I know that if we want to roll out medicines, we can do that. We can really do that. There's something we're not doing here. When I hear Dr. Shanina Knighton, who's an infection preventionist, Dr. Corder, and Dr. Arnold, I don't hear her in this discussion, Dr. Corder and Dr. Arnold. She's at every kindergarten, preschool, high school, grammar school, church. She's a rock star. And she should be out here talking to people. Because every time we hear her talk, Dr. Arnold, Dr. Corder, and Attorney Hoffler, we all feel like the biggest fools in the world because we think we're clean. And she's like, no, honey, you're not washing your hands properly.
Even today.
Even today.
I have forgotten a little something. Even today.
Right.
And Santita, and could your guest comment the collapse of our health care systems and hospitals? I think I heard that in Alabama or Mississippi. I'll hang up, but if they could just comment.
Well,
on the reality.
We got left here, of course, Doctor. Well, let me ask you, Dr. Arnold. We have fewer than 1 million beds for 330 million Americans. Do we need more beds?
Yeah, we do, and it's regional. So in Illinois, for example, we still have quite a number of ventilators available, and we still have ICU beds. But if you go to Texas, if you go to Oklahoma, Alabama, Florida, Texas, Georgia, I mean, all the southern states, right? And if you go into Texas, right now they're saying that they have 2 to 10 ICU beds available for children, and it's decreasing. And they're saying now that there's going to come to a point where if a child gets involved in a fall, in a car accident, there is not going to be an ICU bed for them because all the ICU beds are taken. All the ventilators are taken. So we don't have the reserve in many of the states, and especially in rural communities where they don't have the capacity like you do have in a larger inner city urban areas. They are going to be really hit hard. The critical access hospitals are already working on a shoestring. Local health departments are not funded enough in this country to do the work that they do all the time. So there is a definite downfall, and many of the people are retiring early. They're saying, I'm done with this because I don't have the protective equipment I need. I've been doing this as part of my passion for my life, but I'm at the age of 65. I'm at the age of 70. Why am I still here if you're not giving me the protections I need as a healthcare worker? So we are in a very, very dangerous spot. And one of the major ways that we can turn it around is for everyone to get vaccinated. That is what we're going to put this fire out. It's like having a California fire when the embers go from that fire into, 20 miles away, 15 miles away. They blow in the air and the wind, and they start a fire somewhere else. That's what the variants are doing.
Well,
They're jumping from place to place.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this question very quickly. I've got about a minute and a half before we go. If you go to the hospital with COVID, what about therapeutics? It's hard to get these monoclonal antibodies, and I mean, many people have to engage in a fight, Dr. Arnold, and that's not right. We don't have access to the therapeutics, I think, that we should have.
Yeah, and there are, the incubation period for this virus is about 0 to 5 days. It's a little bit shorter for the Delta variant. They feel maybe 3 to 4 days. And the peak of the viral replication in your body is about 7 days. But when you get 10 days, that's when your body overreacts to this virus. That's part of the problem, that our immune system actually overreacts trying to fight it. And it releases all these things called cytokines that make our body go out of control. So there are some medications that can be utilized, to try to get your system under control and to get things in place. So remdesivir, we've heard about, lopinavir, and then ribavirin, 3 of the antiviral drugs that are mainly being used now. There was a major, United Kingdom study where they looked at 1,024 different studies, and then they boiled it down to about 40 to 60 studies that really focused on what these things are doing and whether they're effective. Chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine of former President fame is garbage. It doesn't work. It actually, the mechanism it uses is to block the sugars from being added to the surface of the viruses. And then we have the other things, convalescent plasma from someone who's been sick, taking their antibodies they form to treat someone else. And then we have monoclonal antibodies that are made within the system, within the pharmaceutical companies. Now,
I got 10 seconds. Hold that thought. Hold that thought, because if we can just get on the other side of the break, everybody, I want you to hear that important information, because you need to know what you need to ask for when you get to the hospital, if that happens, or if you have to advocate for a loved one. It's important to know what you need to get. I just went through this, and I certainly want that for you. But as we go, I want to thank all of you for your support, for your love. It means so much to Jesse, Johnny, Yusuf, Jackie, and our parents, Reverend and Mrs. Jesse Jackson. We thank you for all of the love. It means more than I can say. More than I can say. More than I can say. Love you, love you, love you. God bless you. Stay right here. Going to talk a little bit more about COVID when it comes home. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Okay.
Yes, Santita, I'm going to have to run, but that was a fabulous show.
Oh,
Fabulous.
bless your heart. You made it fabulous. You
Oh,
made it.
you're so kind.
I was going to say, Dr. Quarters, before you go, and this is, again, like, just because right now we don't have vaccination treatments for children, I would suggest looking into studies around the use of betadine, as well as studies around the use of chlorhexidine gluconate, because unfortunately these are not measures that are being talked about for our kids that cannot be vaccinated. But we know that it has a kill rate for COVID up to 95 to 99%. And it's not to say that these are measures that should be used every day, but if we know that these measures, like betadine or hexane gluconate, can kill pathogens for up to 5 days. So the question comes is why, if we're trying some of these drugs for other measures, why are we not trying some of these preventative measures for people that cannot be vaccinated?
Correct. Okay. What's your cell number?
Oh, you know what? No, because we're on Facebook Live. Okay. What I'm going to do, I'll add the two of you by text right away.
Okay.
I think what we've got to do, someone like Dr. Knighton, she needs to be everywhere, because you need to know how to prevent infection. It's like but you also need attorney C.K. Hoffler so you can know what your rights are, because that's becoming an issue.
Okay.
There are very few Black people who have run a whole state public health system. Oh, very few people. That's not a job you can just apply for and get. People need to know Dr. Arnold, and he's also one of our top veterans. It's like, these are people, when I'm looking at the news, I'm like, why don't you have these folks on there? I mean, what is this? They should have you. Talk to me about the children. So that's why that's why you and Dr. Knighton by text right away.
I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Okay.
And yesterday we were talking about the Simmons.
Why don't you talk about these therapeutics?
Okay.
Oh no, please. We're on Facebook Live now. Yes.
Oh, we are. Oh, okay.
Oh yes.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah. So as we're talking about the therapeutics, I was just thinking about the conversation we had yesterday too about I was mentioning Onesimus, right? So he was an African slave that was with Cotton Mather. His congregation actually purchased Onesimus, who he named him Onesimus, meaning useful. And Onesimus got into Boston about 1706, and he actually taught Cotton Mather how to inoculate people against smallpox, which had been practiced in Africa for generations, thousand years. And they had actually inoculated people, kids against snake venom. And so he taught him the technique. So later on, Cotton Mather and another doctor who was there, who worked with him, were both inducted into in London into the Royal Society of Medicine. And Onesimus never got any credit for it. But then in 1764, Jenner came on and he used cowpox, right? So he used the cowpox virus to inoculate people against smallpox, which is similar to what Onesimus was doing with a very small amount of the smallpox. And so he is the father of vaccinology, right? So our history goes back thousands of years as far as medicine and our intersection with this. And we have got to come out of the past in some of our beliefs about where we come from. And so a lot of these new technologies, all these things, Ernest Everett Just was the father of in vitro fertilization and cell studies, and cellular interaction. A lot of this is the basis for what we're looking at now in some of the modern therapies. So, when we look at these things, like I was mentioning, hydroxychloroquine has no place in treatment. Neither does entering your body with light beams, as was suggested by a non-qualified president about what we should be doing to ourselves. And then we have these other things. Remdesivir is showing some promise, as well as the monoclonal antibodies. But what they've shown is that not one of these is effective enough alone from the studies that they have been reviewing.
Mm-hmm.
And so usually they do a combination of them. And as you were mentioning, these should be offered to people who are especially in the early stages of infection. In the later stages of infection, when it becomes severe and uncontrolled and the person's on a ventilator, they don't see as much of a benefit. It's more in the earlier period that they're seeing some benefit from using these therapies. So we need to make sure that they are available, especially in communities of color, where the resources have a tendency not to be distributed equally throughout our communities. And we need to make sure that they have access to those things, and that doctors need to know how to use these things and to make sure that they're offering it to the patient.
Because that's not because my problem is that's not happening. It's not, they're not. It's not being offered equally. It's not. Governor DeSantis in Florida, I take his politics off the table. I appreciate the fact that he's at least availing people of therapeutics. Because it's like from what I can see, as I look at what they're revealing about President Trump's case, you have to throw a lot of stuff at him in order to keep him alive.
Yes.
A lot of us, Black people, have been presenting at the hospital, Dr. Arnold, for more than a year. For the first few months, we couldn't get tested. And they would send us back home when we knew from what we'd been told on the news, I've got COVID, or at least I think I do. And folks couldn't get tested. And then by the time they represented themselves at the hospital, they had to be put on the ventilator and they died. And I just don't enough of that. People need to know what their options are. They need to be told them so they can ask intelligent questions and get the treatment that they need. Period.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was going to say, too, and this is just regarding the studies, and it's not that I am an advocate for, let's say, hydroxychloroquine, okay? But I do want to also put out there that the thing about science is that science is about discovery, and just as many studies, meaning, and I'm not going to say just as many, the problem is that there are studies from other countries, as well as even a few that are here, that does highlight that hydroxychloroquine with the form of other treatments has been effective or reduced clinically relevant symptoms. And so I think that is the problem, when information is being presented, it's done in such a polarized manner that it does not provide people with those options to help them understand that one form of treatment may have a better outcome than another form of treatment. But there are studies out there that do support it. And so I just want to be clear about that, because if someone were to go to the literature and say, okay, well, he said that this doesn't work, they need to understand that they're going to find studies out there that show that it does.
This meta-analysis is based on 1,409 studies. And what they found is that some of these studies are not being done correctly, or they don't have adequate sample sizes. So when I give advice from the studies, I'm talking about meta-analyses that come through Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, United Kingdom, so places that have looked at this and said that Trump was absolutely lying.
I get it, but you see, literally, that's where it's the intersection, though, between the science and between politics.
Yeah, but that's off the table. This is science. This is
right. So
I'm saying that it can be dangerous for you to do it because it can actually cause arrhythmias in your heart.
Well, you're going out, Dr. Arnold. We can't hear you.
Oh,
yeah, it's going in and out. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay. Yeah. I want to make your point.
Okay. So my point is that we have to stay with the science, and there are studies on everything. There are studies that say there's no such thing as gravity, right? But we have to go with these meta-analyses and look at what people are telling us. And you can see Fauci, you can see all the medical personnel behind Trump when he said use hydroxychloroquine cringe. Because they looked at it and said, what the heck are you talking about?
But my problem with him was this. If this is so appalling to you, then resign and make a public fuss of it. He's been in the game 40 plus years at the top of the heap. Just go do it. Do it because now I'm looking at you not wear a mask with this man. And then I bump into an article months down the road and you say, well, actually I knew that you needed PPEs, but I didn't have enough. I'm looking at you with my eyebrow arched to my hairline. I'm saying, well, what's the deal?
Dr. Arnold, so I think I was just going to say, I think the thing is, and this is honestly why I brought it up, because I think that our audience needs to hear that piece about the meta-analysis and understanding that information that's going to be presented. You can go out and find a headline that says that it works. But just as you mentioned, I'm drawing this conclusion based off of me doing this analysis that has looked at X amount of studies. Because when we don't present the information like that, then they're not aware. So we have to realize that there is a huge disconnect between us as scientists and what the public knows. So if the public was to go out there and say, okay, well, I can find a lot of studies, they're going to say, okay, well, this is science too. So how do we conclusively decide what is going to be the best course of action, as well as how do we decide when we need to change paths? And I think that is the piece that is missing.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that there has to be a much better level of communication. But the problem we have is through the media and through the geopolitics of everything. From the beginning, if you really closely follow what the CDC was saying, it was an evolving situation. And then you had politicians walking in and forcing people and agencies to make statements they really should never have made. And they need to take the politics out of science.
Which is honestly, yeah.
And honestly, they have not done that.
They haven't. They really haven't.
Yeah, we have the federal, we have so we have the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and we have the executive branch. What we need to do is have a scientific branch of government that is insulated from people messing with facts and playing political games with people's lives. Now, like I said, because of what they've been putting out there, the distortions, Fox News, and everyone else who's out there that's doing crazy stuff. Now, Fox News is an example. Yeah, I found out yesterday listening to CNN, and one of the things that they mentioned is that Fox News is saying, don't wear masks, don't get vaccinated, don't do this, right? They have an employee mandate that they have to be vaccinated.
Absolutely.
They have a mandate they have to wear masks inside of their studio. But they're telling the rest of the public, go and die. So we need to have a real come to God talk about who should be speaking out there and who's qualified to speak.
We need to talk to all of the networks because they're not getting enough voices on there. Because I look at all of them, frankly, with a fair amount of skepticism. Because they're not letting enough stories get told. They're not letting enough voices get out there. I have neighbors who lecture me at night and who tell me, get a vaccine, get a vaccine, get a vaccine. Okay, that's great. But why don't you talk to people who've had vaccine injuries? Why don't you talk to people who have underlying health conditions that prohibit them from getting vaccines? Why don't you give people a fuller picture? They have politicized. Fauci politicized. Trump everybody politicized. Everybody. Because Big Pharma would not let anyone talk about alternatives. Everybody's politicized this, and it's to the shame and death of a lot of people.
And then there's a lack of team science. And I'm actually working on an article about this now, meaning that just the nurse alone can't solve this problem. An infectious disease researcher that is specialized in HIV/AIDS cannot solve this alone. A pharmacist, an immunologist. There should have been a team of individuals working together to best make decisions, not just one person speaking on infection prevention, because you can tell someone that, yes, they need to clean their hands, but you don't understand the science of how they need to clean their hands. If you're telling someone, like, you know what, wear a mask, How many times should it be changed? Are there any rules that are on the box that, tells us how many hours it should be worn? Is dentists involved? There is a such thing called mask mouth syndrome. How does this work with individuals wearing masks all day? So there are a numerous amount of questions that still need to be answered that, unfortunately, unless we have everyone at the table telling each different side of the spectrum, saying, well, this is the advantages of this. As a public health professional, this is what I recommend. As a pediatrician, this is what I recommend. Then we can't come together with a comprehensive decision. And this is why, even though we have guidelines that are written by the CDC, which sometimes get retracted, which sometimes are there or not, we need to have those discussions, because I can think back, Santita, maybe, 3-4 months ago, where we had a topic just because the CDC said that people need to roll back environmental cleaning.
Yeah.
Which is fun for me, because now I'm back out swabbing public surfaces and finding that they're just as disgusting as they were before, which means that people are still going to be at risk, if not getting ill from COVID, getting ill from other things. And the question comes, is that political? Because we were in a period of where it wasn't profitable. So we have a lot of questions that we still need to answer, but the number one goal of everyone should be to keep people safe.
Yeah, and one thing that's happening right now is that most of the people, a very high percentage of the people who are dying are African American. Most people who are dying are white, but it's a disproportionate number of African Americans dying based on our representation in the general population. And one of the things that we don't talk about is, how is that going to affect intergenerational wealth?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are people who are dying early and not getting their pension, not getting Social Security, not getting, not getting, their 401k. All this stuff is falling apart for them. And we are big tax contributors to this system, and we're not reaping the benefits of the taxes we paid for our entire lives. And so, and one of the things that was brought up before about seniors taking care of children, one of the fears I had, I asked the mass vaccination team that was here in Illinois. So I started working with IDPH about March of 2020. I've been volunteering since June, I think, from that time on last year. And the one question I asked them, I said, okay, so you have a senior citizen that, shows up in a hospital. And what they do is, the person is really kind of incoherent. They get really sick. You put them in an intensive care unit, and then all of a sudden you put them on a ventilator, right? And this is like 7 days later, 2 weeks later. I said, how many of you thought that person has children in front of their house that have no keys to get in? What happened to those children? Where are these children right now?
Yeah. But see, that's why I want to. But see, that's why I want to see you in the discussion, Dr. Arnold, because of the way you think. See, this is the whole thing is. I know someone like me. I don't want that, because I got some black people who make my flesh crawl. I want some people who understand. Yes, and I'm saying it on Facebook Live. Yes, because unless you look at life from, as my father says, the manger up, not just the mansion down, you're missing my point. I'm talking about people who I know some 78, 79-year-olds who can't get to Northwestern today. They'd be turned away. Shameful. They don't have access to the therapeutics. Shameful. That's wrong. Not to have an infection preventionist on TV all over the media, Dr. Arnold, while we are in a pandemic trying to prevent infections, is illogical. It's crazy. When you have gone with black and brown communities and with poor people, for someone who really understands the culture, why we do the things that we do, as you do, Dr. Arnold, for you not to be all over the media, it's just negligent. It's criminal. Because you know what he's going to say, Shanina? When people come to him and say, well, why don't black people? He's going to say, wait, hold on. Because I know Dr. Arnold. I know Damon Arnold. He's going to say, wait. You have to understand how we got here. Did you even ask why the child? Did you ask about her? Her child is outside waiting right now. Are you even thinking about that?
Yes.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's the discussion. There's people, they don't even realize it. When these folks are looking at the news and listening to the radio, they are not hearing their stories. So they are writing people off, including folks, people who look like us who get the mic. Because it's like they don't even understand. They're clueless too. That's not working.
But that's been the thing. And I will tell you, and Dr. Arnold said it early, COVID affect us because of our historical issues in terms of health disparities, but the actual virus itself does not have a color, you know? But the thing is just as, you know, I've been doing, the message has been missing in our community. So literally, I took a detour from my research just to make sure that individuals could understand what it means to comprehensively practice. So this was already a part of my focus for older adults, the vulnerable inside of healthcare settings, was to get them to focus on infection prevention, self-management, while they were admitted as patients. So patients cleaning their hands. And even too, Santita, with your parents being in there, I pray to God that they know to ask for hand hygiene materials. I hope that someone has hand sanitizer near their bed, because the same surfaces, the bed rails, the call lights, the devices that those healthcare workers may touch and have the ability to clean their hands, they want to make sure that they're able to clean their hands as well. And just as we know, there are no guidelines, there are no policies that are put in place that makes the hospitals provide mandatory patient hand hygiene education, as well as an understanding that healthcare-associated infections exist. So people are being missed from the messaging, and there are more than one virus or more than one bacteria or fungus that can affect us right now. But it's now to the point where, because that messaging is missing, then we are having issues that we're having. I'm talking about, I was in the store the other day, and a young lady had gloves on. And I just politely asked her how often she changed her gloves. And she said, I don't change my gloves. And she was, I'm talking about, she was sassy, okay? She said, I don't change my gloves. I said, well, you are aware, you know, that your own skin, you know? So I had to go on a defense mechanism and pull up my credentials first, so I could explain to her why it is she was doing herself a disservice by wearing those gloves. Just within a matter of 5 seconds, even before I could speak, she had already adjusted the front of her mask with those gloves that I watched her service other people right in front of me, including touching their cards and their merchandise and other surfaces, and said, my problem is, as I said, and I don't want you to be offended, but just a second ago, I watched you touch your mask unknowingly with those gloves on. Just know that unlike your hands, which have a protective layer on it, those gloves will build up bacteria and germs like a bioburden on your germs that then will come in contact with you. COVID can live on your skin for up to 9 hours. So if you touch your skin with those gloves, then just know that you can still be potentially contaminated. This is not information that is being shared with people in general. So dangerously, we have PPE that's available. So people are misusing PPE that's being made available, when we know on the CDC's website for healthcare workers, it mentions that none of these measures are 100% and that they must work together, and that it still presents some risk if used incorrectly. The public has access to this stuff now, but there is no education in regards to how to use things correctly. So this is a situation of where we will be dealing with unintended consequences. And even still, when I brought up to colleagues the concept of mask mouth syndrome, the fact that if you are not handling your mask correctly, if you are not continuing to breathe through your nose, if you are not taking care of your oral hygiene, masks can have a detrimental effect on you if you are not careful. We need to be talking about this. But again, these are not topics that are being discussed. And unfortunately, the ones that are going to suffer is the Black and brown communities, because we already knew that there were dental issues that existed even before the pandemic in regards to people getting preventative care.
And there was one thing, there was a study that was done that the average person, and it was done with, I think it was in medical school or something, they were looking at students, and they said that they did a big study, and they found that the average person touches their face 25 times in an hour. And
absolutely
transfer, a virus from a surface to your eyes, to your mouth, to your nose. and those can be entry points for a virus as well. And,
absolutely.
And just so that you know, Dr. Arnold walks around with this information. It says that all the time. Have you noticed that you touch your face? It's true.
Yeah, and it's important. It is so important because many people don't have an awareness of it. I mean, and it's actually, we have to get to a state of where we're not defensive about it. But I wholeheartedly agree. Trust me, like Dr. Deb would tell you, I always talk about the mask because I call them chin girdles when people wear them around their chin. But people don't realize that, like, if they got it up on their face properly, covering their mouth and their nose, but you're in front of somebody talking or you're in an environment where the droplets are suspended in the air, they're now on your exposed neck. So then when you go to lower your mask just to get a breather and then pull it back up the next time you need to use it again, you've now taken all of those germs from your neck and transferred them directly to your mouth and your nose, which of course is going to increase your risk of being sick.
Yeah, and one thing
And
is
so
it's important to have this social distancing too. It's not social distancing. I always say physical distancing because it's not social isolation or disconnection or abandonment, right? But the physical distancing between two people, because if you walk by someone that's smoking a cigarette and you have a mask on, if you smell the smoke, you're getting smoke from inside their lungs that they just breathed out, and it could be carrying the virus right through your mask.
Would you say that one more time, please?
So cigarette smoke is one of those indicators that you're being exposed to other people's breath all the time. So even if a person's not smoking, their breath is out there. But if a person is smoking, and I have, my background's internal medicine and in occupational medicine, so I did 2 residencies. But in the occupational medicine side, it's environmental and occupational health and safety. So particles in the air, I still have this question in my mind because you have to prove it by science. In God we trust, all others bring data, right? That's the creed.
That's right.
And so if you look at particles, I'm wondering if these particles can carry viral particles attached to their surfaces. They adhere to those particles or not. I don't know, but my feeling is that you're breathing in air from somebody else that's smoking. If you're walking down the street and you smell it, it means that it's going through your barrier. So most masks are not N95, and the respiratory criteria for that is the codes of federal regulation, the CFRs, and all that, where they talk about how effective certain types of masks are, and rebreathing masks, all those kinds of things. But the mask does offer some protection, but as it was being mentioned, it's not 100% foolproof. So I still tell people to make sure that you still physically distance if you can away from large groups. If you're indoors especially, and even if you're outdoors, if you're in a crowd and you don't know whether people are vaccinated or not, you should still be protecting yourself. But the key thing, beyond mask and doing everything, get vaccinated, get fully vaccinated. That's the one thing that we've been showing that keeps you out the hospital, keeps you from going into foreclosure on your home because you're amassing all these medical bills that you may not be able to pay. So why go onto a ventilator to learn this lesson about getting vaccinated? And the Kaiser Family Foundation did a study, and it was back in July 19th when they released this for 40 states. And at that point, they said 65% of Asians were vaccinated, 48% of whites, 41% of Hispanics, and 36% of blacks nationally. So we're at the bottom of the list as far as the percentage of people who are fully vaccinated. And this is based on 40 states that they studied. So we have really, really got to pick up the vaccination rate in our community because it has implications for our children, for children, because we don't know how it's going to affect them. Right now, you can get vaccinated down to the age of 12, and they're working on trying to get the right dosage for vaccinations for those younger than 12. But until that happens, we have a duty to protect our seniors and our children. And so the best way to do that is to get vaccinated and stop the spread of this virus.
Everybody? Shanina, Dr. Knighton?
Yes, I'm still here. I'm listening too.
Well, I know I want your closing thoughts from you all, but I mean, what a discussion today. Whew. And bless, and I can't thank people enough for being so kind. Um, and really and sending my parents all of this love and the prayers. We really need it, and we are so grateful for your love and your prayers. But your closing thought, Dr. Knighton.
So remember that prevention is better than treatment, and that all of these measures must mindfully work together, meaning that when you are out in public, be conscious of cleaning your hands, be conscious of cleaning your third hand, which is your phone, making sure that if you are wearing a mask, are you practicing mask etiquette, meaning that you're cleaning your hands before and after putting it on, making sure that you're not wearing it as a chin girdle and that you're removing it properly, making sure that you are taking care of your teeth, making sure that when you say that you are going to physically distance, you actually physically distance. Remember that when you are outside in outside air, there is a lack of studies that exist that shows that you are going to get COVID by being outside in outside air. It is proper ventilation. However, if you are on inside, whether you are vaccinated or not, if you are skeptical about the ability to be able to socially distance, or even about the HVAC system, that's the heating, ventilation, air conditioning system, if you don't think that there's good circulation and that the system is not up to date, when in doubt, wear your mask. It is going to be very important for your safety, and it should cover your nose and your mouth. Remember to keep your body with vitamins. If you are a smoker, consider lowering your smoking habits or quitting altogether. Remember, this is a respiratory infectious disease, and it's going to attack your lungs just like it can attack any other part of your body. Yes, in a stage of where right now vaccinations are absolutely important. However, just as we are discovering and just as we know by the flu vaccine every year, it is not going to cover you indefinitely. So you still should keep up with your preventative practices, even if you are vaccinated. If you aren't vaccinated, you should be exploring what other kind of preventative measures you can take so you can keep others safe as well as yourself. Because even if you are concerned about you making it, the ones that you love may not.
Dr. Arnold, your closing thought?
One of the things is that the national data right now, from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, what they're finding and what Dr. Fauci says with ACIP, right? So that's the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices that he heads, and that's part of NIH, the National Institute of Health. Less than 0.004% of fully vaccinated people had a breakthrough case. Everyone's worried about these breakthrough cases right now. And less than 0.004% of fully vaccinated people led to a hospitalization, and less than 0.001% of fully vaccinated people died from a breakthrough COVID-19 case. That means that 99.999% of people who have died after these vaccinations became available for people who are fully vaccinated, they're much smaller percent of these things, 0.001%. 99.999% of those people who died were unvaccinated. And many of them were partially vaccinated. It's important for you to become fully vaccinated. Make sure you get both doses. That increases the odds of you having a preventive effect in your body of stopping this virus from going forward. And also the Mayo Clinic findings right now, what they're finding from the heart of people who died from COVID is that there is heart muscle damage and what we call cardiomyopathy, where the heart starts to swell. And very, very small blood vessels in the heart are becoming clogged with blood clots. And they're finding arrhythmias in the heart as well. So this is the abnormal rhythm of the heart, as electrical activity in the heart. For the lungs, they're finding that the people's lungs are turning into like cotton. If you try to expand cotton to try to breathe, you can imagine how your lung would feel if it was trying to expand and it was made out of cotton. Hard to pull cotton apart. So this is long-term scarring and tissue damage that can change the course of your life for good. So the Delta virus is particularly good at causing extensive lung tissue damage. That's why it's very, very important for people to get vaccinated now. Also, even in young people, they've been finding strokes, seizures, and you've been hearing about this thing, Guillain-Barré syndrome. What is that? It's an ascending motor paralysis. It starts in your feet where the muscle gets sort of paralyzed, and it goes up the legs and goes up to your body, and it can go to your diaphragm and compromise your breathing. Now, from vaccination, there's a very, very rare instance where people do have Guillain-Barré. But guess what? If you get COVID-19, your risk of getting Guillain-Barré is much higher than if you look at just the vaccination. So the things that we're worried about, it's also been associated with, from the Mayo Clinic findings, that may also increase the risk of developing Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. So these things are real problems that we have got to face. We've got to let people know that the risk they're taking by not getting vaccinated on time and making sure that they have this. So the long hauler syndrome is out there. It's changing people's lives forever. We don't want young people developing chronic diseases before they even grow up. So it's really important to protect them, do everything the nurse is saying about making sure that you use all those precautions with cleaning and all that until these children are able to get vaccinated. Those who are less than 12 years old, it is incumbent upon you to protect them. And it's incumbent upon you to protect the senior citizens. The third dose is going to become available in September 20th. It's 8 months after the first doses were actually administered. The second dose of the Moderna or Pfizer were administered earlier this year, in January, February timeframe. And when your 8-month time period comes up, if you've been fully vaccinated, go 8 months from your second dose and get your booster dose. What they're showing is that initially they thought this would be produce 10 times as many antibodies, but what all the studies are showing now is that it's much more effective than they thought, and it's producing 20 to 30 to 40 times the number of antibodies that you had before that protect your body from getting ill from the variants of this horrible virus. So make sure you follow the science, listen to it, and know that there's always people with different disopinions and back and forth and all that. Listen to the science and listen to the people who are telling you, they made mistakes. Wear the mask, don't wear the mask. It's all geopolitics and all that. Me, I've been using my mask since day one. I don't care what the media is telling me to do with my mask. I'm washing my hands since day one.
But you know what? But people who we've been told to trust, Dr. Arnold, they told you something else.
Yes.
So that there's something to overcome. But I think, Dr. Arnold, and I hear you and I trust you and believe you. That having been said, other people have had some other experiences. And perhaps what I should do is try and find them and have a round table in which you would, participate and help to direct it. Because we're not listening to some of these other experiences that people have had as they're talking on my chat line right now. And I think it's important for us to do that and not discount. That's not what you're doing, but I'm saying that happens a lot. We're seeing people and their experiences, which are valid, they are being discounted and they're not being heard, and that's a mistake. I'm like, no, you need to, we need to listen to that because some folks, one size does not fit all. And for those rare cases where these things happen, because my father's one of these rare breakthrough cases, right? That's what he would be.
Right.
So, and the thing is, in Israel, one of the most vaccinated country on earth, the people in the hospital are the vaccinated ones. We need to, because you remember AIDS, was heterosexual over on the African continent, but it was homosexual over here,
That was a
right?
pandemic too. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, wait a minute. Would you all just kind of, and I'm painting with a broad brush when I say that, because everybody gets all this stuff. But I'm just saying, for us to have the discussions about everything, because then, when you dug down with, why are women getting AIDS? Why are women getting HIV? Well, there are men who have men, okay? So let's talk instead of, vilifying people. Let's talk
Oh yeah.
so we can know how to protect ourselves,
Right.
and get our way through this. Hmm?
Yeah, and then, since last March, what I've been doing with the Office of Minority Health, and Veronica Holloway is a deputy over there, and what we've been doing, we had over 150 Zoom talks with different communities, right? So we had it with the African American community, the Latino community, the LGBTIA plus community. We had it with the disabilities community. We had it with, refugees and immigrants, and you name the group, right? And we amassed a lot of information about how people were thinking about things. And what was interesting to me is that yes, there's misinformation and and what I call disinformation, which is destructive information, where someone purposefully puts it out, like Fox or whoever, that can actually harm people. And I wish the attorney was still on, because I think that there should be some kind of cause of action against people who give their unbridled advice, because what we normally do is hold someone to the standard of care that you are portraying yourself to be conveying to people.
On CNN to say that if you don't have the vaccine, you shouldn't be able to shop. That's irresponsible as it can be, particularly when we know that people are walking around here vaxxed and they are carrying the virus. And because they have been vaccinated, they feel they don't need to wear a mask. A lot of people are saying a lot of irresponsible things, Dr. Arnold, on all the networks, because they're all owned by corporations who speak for the corporate voice. They don't speak for the people. None of them do. Fox doesn't, CNN doesn't, MSNBC doesn't. MSNBC fired, who was it, Phil Donahue, who had their number one show, when they were building the network. He had their number one show. You know why they fired him? Because he was trying to stop the invasion of Iraq. Please. Talk about hypocrisy. No. None of them are your friends, everybody. I've worked there. None of them are your friends. That's why you need to get your own information. No, that's why I have you. Because I need someone who I can trust, who I can talk to, who understands me, who understands my misgivings, and boom. But that's not what I'm getting. I got one on CNN telling folks, if you don't have a vaccine, we should consider not getting groceries. First of all, politically, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Because in America, Americans don't do mandates well. We don't. I'm like, do you know what you're opening up here? This is stupid and it's dangerous. There was someone just outside of the Library of Congress threatening to blow it up. Oh, he was just no, honey. You had people who rushed the Capitol who were looking for Nancy Pelosi with nooses and the vice president, a Democrat and a Republican. So really, this is a powder keg of an environment. So a lot of people are saying a lot of things, and they're putting forth a lot of ideas that are very irresponsible that can get us all hurt. And for me, I'm like,
Yeah, one of the things we have to do is talk. We didn't talk about the date, and I'm sure the nurse heard this stuff too.
her phone dropped. Now I'm going to let you go after you make this statement.
Oh, okay, yeah. And one of the things that is out there is I remember looking at this one website, and it came out in June, and what they said was, this person said that look what they did to those poor men in Tuskegee, the experiment, right? And they said, oh, they gave them, they injected them with syphilis, and then they just, didn't treat them, and look how they mistreated them, right? And then there was actually a nurse who said, I learned about that when I was in nursing school. What a horrible thing they did to those men. And then a third person came on and said, yeah, that's why I'm not going to get vaccinated, and that's why I'm not going to even wear a mask, right? And then they had over 5,600 followers. And the problem with it is that it wasn't a Tuskegee experiment. It was a Tuskegee study. A study is different from an experiment. And a study is when you don't do an intervention, but what you do is you diagnose people as having syphilis and you don't give them a treatment like penicillin back in 1964. So they followed these men from 1932 to 1972, 40 years, and then they ended up not giving them what they needed to cure syphilis. So they ended up getting stage 2, stage 3, stage 4 quaternary syphilis, tertiary quaternary, the central nervous system involvement. They passed it on to other generations. So it's analogous to what we're going through right now, in that if you don't get vaccinated, you're not allowing yourself to use the penicillin that they denied you for syphilis. So you're putting yourself in the same position as being part of a study where they were looking at you to see, let you acquire the natural infection of COVID-19 and have a higher death rate than everyone else because of the social determinants of health in your life.
But you know what? The same question can be asked: why were people turned away when they presented? And why with the breakthrough cases? Why is the CDC not studying them? My only point with you, Dr. Arnold, is that they're doing a lot of things that are inconsistent, and that needs to stop. We need to play the game by one set of rules. If you know that people who've been vaccinated and people who have not, people who've gotten the shots and people who haven't, if you know that they have the same virus, then everybody needs to get the COVID-19 test. Period. You need to stop saying that this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, because that is not true. You have a lot of vaccinated people walking around out here maskless, or they certainly are careless because they feel that they are protected. And when you use a term like vaccination, you feel you're protected. You feel that you cannot get or give something. That's what you think. So they need to stop that. So they need to stop it, Dr. Arnold. They need to stop it. They need to stop.
Yeah.
So that's the message right.
Yeah, and part of what they're in, so Santita, is a learning curve too, because this is, is something that they're trying to figure out how this thing is moving. So it is changing, as the attorney was saying earlier. But the other thing that's going on is that people it's not just the pandemic that's hurting people, it's unemployment. It's
absolutely.
People, being, evicted from homes. All those things are public health issues as well. And people are dying from heart attacks because they're not enough beds open. So they have a mess on their hands as far as trying to regulate and balance, whether people should go to the hospital, stay home. What should people do? So it's a very complex environment for messaging, but the one consistent message should be, wear your mask.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're vaccinated, if you have symptoms when you're vaccinated, get tested, and then make sure you get the appropriate treatment if you go to a medical facility.
Look, you don't get any pushback from me. I'm just saying all of it. They need to put all the information out there, because it's not out there. It's not out there, and a lot of people are having a lot of different experiences, and we've had different experiences, and they're not being respected. People are named, people are being talked down to on, in media, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. I know people who have underlying conditions, and vaccines, and these shots are not going to work for them. I know people whose children who have been hurt. They can only get on these outlier social media networks. Shame on them. Shame on Facebook and everybody. Shame on them.
Yeah.
Open up the discussion so that what allows this. I don't like conspiracy theory, because that came from the CIA, and that was done to undercut the civil rights movement and the things that we knew J. Edgar Hoover was doing. We knew he was a liar. We knew he was spying. We knew he killed people. We knew that.
Because this is exactly why your show is so important. That's why it's critically important right now. You are saving so many lives by getting information out there and telling people look, this is what's happening. You need to make your own decision, of course. But look, you need to look at the facts and make sure you're protecting yourself to the maximum you can. And we're in a terrible time right now. And we didn't even start talking about the stress this thing is causing in people's lives, the mental health issues.
Look, I got this problem today. Got it.
Oh, yes.
I got it.
Parents, I told you since yesterday, praying for your parents, but I always call your father, that Reverend Jackson, the 5-star general of the civil rights movement. He is the leader of this civil rights movement in this country right now, and your mom is the first lady, and we need to respect them and understand what they've given us the ability to do. So we need to get up off our butts and start helping each other and spread the kind of goodwill. I mean, I've seen your father sit in prisons. I've seen him spend nights in, homeless shelters. I've seen him do things that a person like him never needs to do. But he does it because his heart is in the right place. And he will always be a shining icon in my life. I think that he walks the walk. He doesn't just talk the talk. He actually walks the walk every day of his life.
Well, you know what? I just, God bless him and my mom. I'm just praying for them. In fact, I need to get off the phone because I need to call the hospital to see where they are today.
Yes.
And but I want thank you for availing. Oh, my goodness, for giving us so much of this time today. Because I thank you because people want and need the information, the right information, and you're just a jewel. You're just a gem, and I'm glad that they did not allow you to retire. How about that?
Yeah, I'm still debating that, but
No, I'm not. I'm happy about it. So, so there we go. But I love you, and God bless you, and everybody. I want to thank you all for all the love that you've shown us, and know that we return your love in equal measure, if not more. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow, hopefully, God willing, on the Santita Jackson Show. Dr. Damon Arnold, I love you. Thank you so much.
same here.
Thank you. Thank
God
you.
bless you. Godspeed.
Godspeed to you too. Thank you. Devin Andrakis, thank you for a great show. Everybody, see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. How about that?